Watch almost any TV newscaster with the sound off. Try not to laugh. Look at their eyes. Look at them twitch. See them struggle not to move their head more than 1/4 of an inch in any direction. Watch how they work to keep a straight face as they soothingly regurgitate whatever words are plopped on the teleprompter in front of them. Whatever words, whatever they may mean. Watch their brow nod forward every once in a while to convince you that what they are saying is important. Notice the exact same head moves by the person in the following toothpaste commercial. Will you ever take these people seriously again? Will you ever believe a word they say again? Depends on the drug, I guess. How many of you out there support the death penalty? Come on, out of the closet. I notice people are answering this way, too. I mean, one of these I did recently in St. Louis, all the yeses came from the bar. Personally, I've had a real problem with the death penalty ever since I was about 2 feet tall for one simple reason. What if they've got the wrong person?
Thank you!
Oh no, that's not supposed to happen. Would cops ever lie in this country? I agree. Well, not so funny for people who get locked up for crimes they didn't commit. And since 1993 alone, 21 people have been set free from death row, free from prison, when it was proven they did not commit the crime. And this is after... What's that?
What if they have the right one and you know it?
Well, you don't kill them. I don't think. You know, no other industrialized country in the world has the death penalty except us. China has it. Nigeria has it. What's that?
Texas is a whole other country.
Some people have said that about Oregon, too. And that Portland and Oregon are 2 separate countries as well. Anyway, what I'm getting at with the death penalty is that it does happen to the wrong people, and for that reason alone, it should not be there. For economic reasons, it costs way more millions of dollars to kill somebody than to just sentence them to life in prison if they really did do some horrible crime.
Hell yeah! Shoot them on the spot!
Well, I did say this was the Kip Kinkle Comedy Hour, didn't I? I mean, if he'd just grown up a little few more years and put on a necktie, he could have joined the OCA and the National Rifle Association. And they would have said, "Come right in. We're glad to have you." Anyway, the best-known person who is most likely innocent of a crime, who's on death row right now, and he's got one more appeal left before he gets killed, is Mumia Abu-Jamal. Black Panther activist, respected radio journalist. And a while back, the label I have, Alternative Tentacles Records, put out a Mumia Abu-Jamal spoken word album, a split release with a band called Man is the Bastard. You should try and find this to hear what he has to say and realize what kind of a person they're trying to kill here. So this is for him. This is only supposed to happen in the movies. Henry Fonda in The Wrong Man. Harrison Ford in The Fugitive. North by Northwest. Thin Blue Line. An innocent person when they least expect it, falls into an unbelievable chain of events and finds themselves accused of a crime they could not possibly have committed. Every step in the justice system goes wrong. All seems hopeless as the camera rolls closer and closer to the death chamber until finally, at the very last minute, the authorities are proven wrong and the accused is set free to live happily ever after as the credits roll. After all, this is America, where these sort of nightmares do not happen, because our justice system is fair. Our justice system works. Now imagine you are a respected, award-winning, and courageous journalist whose news reports are sometimes critical of a notoriously violent and corrupt police department. Suddenly, the nightmare happens to you. Shot through the liver at the scene of a crime. Instead of helping you, the cops beat you as you lie on the sidewalk and allegedly beat you again inside the hospital. Not in Haiti, not in China, but in the United States of America. When you wake up from surgery, the nightmare is still there. You are the one accused of what the corporate media tells us is the ultimate unforgivable sin: killing a police officer. You have no criminal record. Ballistics tests don't add up. There is plenty of evidence that you did not and could not commit this crime, but the nightmare just gets worse. Evidence that could clear you disappears. Witnesses disappear. A judge who has sentenced more than twice as many people to death than anyone else in the United States denies you a competent lawyer and denies you the right to defend yourself. Appeals are denied by the very judges who ruled the opposite way in almost identical cases. Not in Mexico, not in Nigeria, but in the United States of America. And unlike the movies, this time a headline-hungry governor salivates like a giggling crocodile, eager to put a black man to death with the stroke of a pen to hold up as a trophy to enhance his political career. Why is our government so hell-bent on killing Mumia Abu-Jamal? Why are they so afraid of him, of his voice, of his way with words, to the point where even a poem about him and the frightening government lawlessness in his case is banned from national public radio? Is it what he says about our country and ourselves, in words so powerful and eloquent that our children may one day study his now banned radio commentaries in school, the way some now study the last words of Bartolomeo Vanzetti before he and Nicola Sacco were executed by the U.S. government in 1927 for a crime they did not commit? The real crime being they were anarchists. They were labor union activists. And if that's not enough, they were immigrants. What have we become? What are we letting ourselves become? This isn't the movies. This is what America has become. A 1995 FBI investigation leads to 6 Philadelphia police officers pleading guilty to assault, framing defendants, stealing money, lying to obtain search warrants, and more, resulting in more than 100 criminal convictions being overturned, yet still no new trial for Mumia Abu-Jamal. And what of all the other wrongfully convicted human beings without Mumia's gifts for communication, who are caged like animals in our mushrooming prison industrial complex system, waiting to be killed by our government to satisfy Generation X-acute America's sick thirst for human sacrifice and modern slavery? When Nigerian environmental and native rights activist Ken Saro-Wiwa was hanged on trumped-up murder charges,
the Nigerian government and Shell Oil were condemned all over the world as outlaws. Now we are the outlaws of the world in the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal. And as more and more wealth gets sucked upward by people who don't need it, and mass rage toward corporate America swells closer and closer to the boiling point, the official response is to keep the lid clamped on, tighter and tighter and tighter, through more and more police-state actions, just like the ones we fought in World War II to eliminate from the face of the earth. If this is allowed to keep going, what has happened to Mumia Abu-Jamal could happen to other innocent people. Like 3 guys in West Memphis, Arkansas, who were convicted of the brutal murders of 3 small children. One is on death row, the other 2 got life. The evidence used to convict them was they wore black clothing and listened to heavy metal. Free the West Memphis 3. If allowed to go far enough, this could happen to anyone. It could happen to me. It could happen to you.
It used to be a big event when the president came to town. A public event. A very public event where the president would ride down Main Street smiling and waving in an open-air car, or at least wave from inside a limousine behind bulletproof glass. The president wanted to see the people. Above all, the people wanted to see the president. Be assured that the president is real. Be assured that from behind the confines of the limousine glass, the president was still one of us. Photo opportunities, the common touch, an important sounding speech in public at an important looking building, a shining memory for each lucky peasant to treasure for a lifetime. Yes, there is a Santa Claus. Now our leaders know all too well what their people really think of them. It's rarely even announced more than a day or 2 in advance when they're coming. They slink in and out of town in what is now treated as enemy territory, to exclusive gatherings of the rich and powerful in limos with black tinted windows. The same kind that get you pulled over if you're a regular person with black tinted windows. On suspicion, you must be some kind of criminal, a drug dealer, a gangsta, or something. Which is not too far from what people suspect of our leaders these days. Nowadays, instead of blowing off work or taking all the school kids downtown to try and catch a once-in-a-lifetime glimpse of the president, people who've heard the president might be in town see a black limo go by with some kind of police escort and feel suspicious, even resentful. Yeah, I'll bet that was the president that just went by. Then they turn around and go back to what they were doing. It's not an event. Just a pain in the ass. And a reminder of the contempt that our once beloved rulers have for the rest of us. They accept hiding behind tinted glass, fearing for your life every hour of every day as just another cost of doing business. This is a piece that dates clear back to my first spoken word album called No More Cocoons that I thought I could put to bed a long time ago, but now it seems necessary to bring it back again. Why I'm glad the space shuttle blew up. No! It wasn't the classroom full of school kids on TV, whimpering in horror, trying to stomach what they'd seen on the screen. Each one of them still wearing one of those pointed birthday hats. No! Our first reaction at my house when the Challenger did its thing was each of us daring the other to call up the local media and claim, hey, we're that legendary Libyan hit squad you've written so much about. And we blew up the space shuttle. Later that night, we gave up the idea. Same old excuse. What if we get caught? Sometimes it does make sense to chicken out. Then I found out we were pretty damn lucky. If the Challenger had made it home, things might now be much worse if we were even still here at all. Because NASA's plan was to send the following space shuttle after the Challenger up with 46 pounds of plutonium. And if that one had blown up, there'd be enough radiation in the air to cause cancer in as many as 5 billion people. And it wouldn't all land in one place either. It slowly goes all over the world, which may explain why the cancer rate declined steadily in the first half of the century, but has held steady, if not grown, ever since atomic testing began. How reckless can you get? How reckless can you get? Up, and away! Launch Star Wars the easy way. Just fire it up into the great beyond and don't tell anybody you put it there. After all, when people don't know what hurts them, they don't care. Just blame the fallout cancer epidemic on Saddam Hussein. And think of all the money people we know and love would make selling how to cope with cancer kits to Martha Stewart people and yuppies. That's why I'm glad that space shuttle blew up, because if one more had gone up and blown up instead, it might have melted all of us too. But did we learn? No. Now I find out that our ever-practical and sensible government is at it again. Last October, NASA launched from Cape Canaveral the so-called Cassini space probe to Saturn. And this one carried 72 pounds of plutonium. Cassini went up on a Lockheed Martin-built Titan IV rocket, some of those rockets that exploded earlier during tests. Thankfully, it did not blow up on liftoff. And they were a little worried because the local broadcasts in the Cape Canaveral area urged people to shut their windows in case of explosion. They didn't even tell you to duck and cover. But Cassini is supposed to have this slingshot maneuver where it was actually launched in the other direction opposite Saturn, so it will rocket around Venus twice and then ricochet and hurtle back towards Earth at over 42,000 miles an hour for a fast and low flyby scheduled on August 16th, 1999, where it'll then use the Earth's orbital pull and gravity to increase the velocity more, so it'll make it all the way to Saturn on August 16th, 1999. That's when it's scheduled to come back. Mark your calendars. Forget the millennium. Because one malfunction or miscalculation, which that far out in space could mean aiming at a granule off to the right or to the left, 1 millimeter and you're 75 miles closer to the Earth or something like that. After 1 billion miles in space, if Cassini comes too close, it could burn up in our atmosphere and rain 72 pounds of plutonium all over the Earth. One speck of plutonium in your system is enough to give you cancer and kill you. Needless to say, the American people, nor all the other people on Earth who could get killed if the slightest thing goes wrong, were ever asked, is this worth it? If that's not enough, the 72 pounds of plutonium aren't even being used to power the rocket, but to fuel 3 radioisotope thermal generators, otherwise known as RTGs, that power the probe's instruments, producing 745 watts of electricity, about the same amount needed to power 7 light bulbs. Is this worth it? According to the European Space Agency, if we'd waited a few more years till the research is done, this could have been accomplished with solar panels that wouldn't kill anybody. Why are we doing this? Because Lockheed built the rocket and the RTGs?
Even their own executives will expire if Cassini misfires. Then what would happen? As people started getting catastrophically ill all at the same time, what would they do? Broadcast on TV? No, you're not getting sick. It's only a cold. No, you're not getting sick. It's only... Oh, you are sick. Looks like everybody's getting sick. Mulder, Scully, what do we do? Just wear sunglasses, stay indoors, read the Bible, watch videos, and since it's somehow Saddam Hussein's fault anyway, we might as well tell you you all have 6 months to live. Then what would happen? Now it's over. It's really over. What matters now? Nothing matters now. Can you imagine what would happen if everyone on earth all realized this at once? Nothing matters anymore. Law and order, why bother? It's now or never to do all those things we always wanted to do right now. Open hydrants, break down doors, cow tipping, armored car tipping, bank stripping, shopping mall free-for-all, loot downtown, piss anywhere, rifle through people's houses and play with their special secret things. Come back and play with them when the full moon is high. The clay pigeon generation has had enough. Invincible sirens and buildings downtown no longer threaten. They're already dead. And so is our money, and so is our discipline, and so is our self-respect, and so is our self-control. Whee! CEOs sail out windows like 1929. Hotwire their BMWs, play Mad Max Chicken on the golf course. Barbecue police officers at major intersections during permanent rush hour. Burn, kill, annihilate, destroy, pillage, the ultimate mini-series. The LA riot that never ends. Strew all our prizes down the middle of Main Street. You can't take it with you. There's not much time anyway. I'm bored now. This is getting old. I'm feeling sick. It really doesn't matter anymore. Armageddon is all around us. Bruce Willis cannot save us. The sky is falling and I want my mommy. Just stay close to me. Hold me. Now. Curl up. Never let me go. Nail the apartment shut. I stashed plenty of food. TV still works. We could drop acid every day. Just hold me. Now, please. That's what would happen. I can't resist digging this one out whenever I'm in football, or should I say football country. And it's halftime at the big football game. Who's winning? The good guys, the bad guys, the Boosters Club in their bozo suits drunk off their ass in the press box? Maybe the real losers are the people who pay to watch. Stay right there. Don't go getting up off the couch to the kitchen to get you a cold one. Batons, marching bands, they're a little obsolete these days. Today's fan is sophisticated. Today's fan wants more. A chain-link portcullis rises at the far end of the stadium, and in parades a caravan of surplus construction cranes, all decked out with monster truck tires and flames. And at the end of each crane is a hangman's noose. And bringing up the rear
is a customized van with one of them airbrushed biker magazine style fantasy paintings on the side and bars on all the windows. The door of the van opens, and men in orange prison pajamas quickly stumble out as though they were pushed, each handcuffed to the other for their 15 minutes of fame. They're 3 strikes you're out prisoners mostly. Maybe a dope dealer or two who made the key mistake of being caught selling to a white kid. They know all too well what this crowd pays to see as they're lined up beneath the cranes and the hangman's ropes are lowered and anchored tightly around their necks. At the top of each noose is a plastic pennant bearing the logo of today's halftime sponsors:
Swoostica shoes, anti-abortion pizza, aftershave, like a rock, everything you wanted in a beer and less. And let's not forget life insurance.
Just can't miss them during close-ups on the instant replays. So ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Your favorite queer-bashing orange juice lady will now push the button. The crane booms rise. The crowd goes insane. Rah! Rah! Shish! Boom! Bah! Rah! Rah! Shish! Boom! Bloodlust! Color my world with more splatter sperm! Rah! Rah! Shish! Boom! Ejaculate! The cranes spin around doing wheelies for the crowd. The victim's arms and legs twitch and dangle in midair. Heavy metal cover versions of war movie themes drone from over the loudspeakers. Until one by one, the condemned hang limp. One by one, they are still. The band strikes up the team fight song, prancing and goose-stepping off the field. A generic beauty queen smiles and waves from the back of a golf cart as it whisks the bodies out to loud applause. The tire tracks in the field are quickly sodded over, but there's still time to go to the snack bar as the election year debate rages on. The number one issue facing our country today: Cowboys gonna win the Super Bowl? Cowboys gonna win the Super Bowl?
For years, those of us who forgot to become afraid of our own power to think and our own observations have seen the writing on the wall. Fortress America, militarized America, drugged America, thug America, frightened America, police state America, Yankee flag used like a swastika America. A lot of people, mostly born after World War II, have gone as far as to say America is becoming the new Nazi Germany. Pat Buchanan, among others, seems to exemplify this as he howls for a so-called culture war against all art and people he considers obscene, subversive, anti-American, and anti-family. He has also gone on record saying, quote, Hitler was a man of great courage. But has America really become the new Nazi Germany? Corporations would love that. After all, who paid to set up the last one? Sure, the screws of dictatorship are tightening, but doesn't this remind you of someplace else? At least the Nazis made the trains run on time. But get our trains to run at all? Forget it! Think Brezhnev. Think Chernenko. Think of an economy falling apart, Cities, factories, nuclear facilities, all crumbling and falling apart because the morally bankrupt old toads at the top are too out of it to care, let alone get anything done. Mass incompetence, spider webs of corruption, bosses rewarded with millions in bonuses for slashing tens of thousands of jobs. Think of a government more and more obsessed with spying on its own citizens, each one a suspected criminal, many of whom love their country very dearly. Or, as Guy Martin put it in an article in Spy magazine, imagine living in a country where an army of aging, cynical functionaries holds the citizenry in thrall. A physically disintegrating country whose government routinely puts people to death. A country where a cornucopia of security forces has a legal mandate to invade the privacy of a terror-ridden populace by whatever means comes easiest to hand. Directional mic, random frisk, urine sample, infrared videotape, phone tap, financial profile, informer, drug raid. Imagine living in a country where the economy is strangled by huge monopolies. A country that cannot effectively engage in trade with its competitors. A country whose punitive bellicose regime undertakes as the foundation of its foreign policy nothing less than total domination of the planet. Yes, you think as you sit back in your chair, it would be terrible to live in the Soviet Union. But the country described is not the Soviet Union at all. It is the United States. Has America become the new Soviet Union? We have a drug czar, an energy czar, even an AIDS czar, and in a still weirder tribute to Orwell, we call our King Kong-sized War Department the Department of Defense. It's getting harder and harder to tell our so-called news magazines and news shows like Time, Newspeak, Newsweek, apart from out-and-out Soviet-style propaganda. Fronting for the corporate police state is the national entertainment state. Instead of news we can really use, we are continually handed things like, "Who deserves to die?" Cover of Newsweek. How about this one? Cyber porn. Time exclusive. A new study shows how pervasive and wild it really is. Can we protect our kids and free speech? Of course, Time says hell no to free speech. Then people might realize how much these magazines lie and quit buying them. Oh no, can't have that. But it was later revealed that this article was not put together by some kind of journalist or expert, but by a student at Carnegie Mellon University who was doing a study on how to get started in the cyber porn business. So the kind of websites he surveyed were like a little askew. But did Time retract the story? No. Instead, they give us the new age of angels. 69% of Americans believe they exist. What in heaven is going on? And what in heaven is going on when the same lovely magazine during the last national election, which used to be a watershed of discussion about issues that actually really mattered, what they gave us this time was Hillary versus Liddy. Who will be a better first lady? And let's not forget all the endless distraction of the shoppers towards what's really going on with more and more about Evita. Our own Evita. Now that she died in the car wreck, what do you want to bet that not too long from now these very kinds of magazines are going to be claiming people put their hands on the television screen and Princess Diana cures their arthritis? It's not far away, believe me. Here we go, another one from Time. Are music and movies killing America's soul? I hope so. But he better be killing America's soul when we're told our soul revolves around Titanic. Or when we're fed an unending diet of these live TV shows like Cops or America's Most Wanted. I mean, they run those shows, especially Cops, or real stories of the Highway Patrol, or now America's wildest police chases. It's like the Super Bowl. It's like a sports cast where the cops are the good guys that everybody's supposed to be rooting for, and the bad guys you're all supposed to hate, almost always young people of color. And if they kick the apartment door open without any kind of a warrant, oh, what the hell, they're the cops, they're the good guys. Get them, rah, rah, we win. It's like this desensitizing agent to get us to not want to have any human rights anymore, to get us to accept that the drug war is okay. Because then people of color might not be in your neighborhood anymore. And, I mean, let's not forget the just out-and-out ridiculous propaganda that went down during the Gulf War. Remember that? Where around here they would say things like, 5 seconds of, looks like there's acting crazy in San Francisco. And you'd have, 20,000 demonstrators. And then cut and give much longer footage to 50 people waving conveniently provided plastic American flags at a mall in Concord. See, everyone, viewers, America supports the war. The most outrageous example I found out, I didn't even know about till I went to where it supposedly occurred in Tampa, Florida. You may recall that when General Schwarzkopf came back from the Gulf War, there was all this hype, especially in the USA Today. Tampa braces for the big parade, the welcome home parade for Schwarzkopf. How will they control 1 million people all wanting to get close to our new hero? And sure enough, on TV, it looked like they were having a big parade for him. But then I get to Tampa and find out from people who say, yeah, I turned on the TV and there were all these people watching the parade. And then I looked out my window and there was nobody watching the parade. And then in the big Tampa Bay Buccaneers football stadium, now named after Houlihan's restaurant chain, by the way, a competitor to Hooters, apparently. You know, they figured it would be a whole Nuremberg-sized crowd filling up the stadium, but no, they had to get the camera angles real tight on Schwarzkopf to have enough people behind him. You know, again, the ruse was supposed to go on. Yellow ribbonism uber alles. America supports the war. And they couldn't even leave the little kids alone. When they reach draft age, you'll have a much better time coercing them to go get killed when you bring them up on Desert Storm bubblegum cards. The first rat to be smelled with these cards is that there was no bubble gum inside. And instead of raising your child on wholesome sports heroes like Deion Sanders or Joe Montana or whatever, they offer you Admiral Frank Kelso. If you look closely at the card, his eyes are an inhumanly swimming pool blue color, with the pupils highlighted a little bit to make him stand out more for that come hither look. That very come hitherism later got him kicked out of the Navy during the tailhook scandal. Here we have General Schwarzkopf with the stars on his hat appearing to possibly have been drawn in, maybe not, looking remarkably like the bully who used to beat me up in elementary school. Here we have the control center with all these big screens tracking our genocidal weapons. Looks just like a big video game, kids. Wouldn't it be fun to be all you can be and play video games in the army and kill Arab children? All neutrality goes out the window with this one. This plane is called the amazing AV-8B Harrier. And why it's amazing is in its batting average on the back. This card is called Lining Up the Tanks, with one tank in the picture, with its nozzle coming out at exactly the same upward angle that Jesse Helms or Kenneth Starr would find obscene. And if that's not enough, look at the color of this flying Tomahawk missile, looking an awful lot like a flying vibrator, complete with the bulb on the end. Again, at the exact same angle that seems to have gotten Monica in so much trouble. Of course, we have Top Gun. Here's another one in the series. This is a sticker that comes with instructions. Peel carefully, display proudly. No, it's not yet another Misfits skull for your skateboard. It is the 6th Field Artillery logo, complete with coiled snake and forked tongue at the top. A rival company put out this Desert Storm Pro set cards, and under intelligence file, they list Christianity. Unfortunately, somebody stole my high-fashion sunset shot carpet bombing card, so I can't show you that one, complete with batting average on the back. But again, what is really killing America's soul? What is more dangerous for our children's fragile eggshell minds? Marilyn Manson or the Promise Keepers? If you want to talk about killing America's soul, people blame music for that right and left. Oh, Marilyn Manson made the kid kill himself. Oh, Snoop Doggy Dogg makes people shoot each other. But compare that to a family that takes away the kids' hip-hop and Marilyn Manson records, and then they all sit around the television at dinner, as so many families do. Hey, everybody, let's turn on real TV and watch somebody burn to death. Or jump out of a building and die. Or for that matter, can you imagine actually being subjected to an episode of Rescue 911 or something, lying on the cold pavement in the worst pain you've ever been in your life from a car wreck, and instead of somebody coming up to help you, somebody comes up with a video camera. You're on candid camera. I mean, that, if anything to do with media, is what is killing America's soul. Our leaders are now chosen for us. Not elected, but selected. In late '94, we woke up the morning after that so-called election to be told our undisputed leader was no longer the President of the United States, but an old-school Southern fried bigot named Newt. Hardly anyone who voted had ever heard of Newt, let alone elected him. But open up a newspaper, turn on the TV even now, and it's what Newt Gingrich, the American Zhirinovsky, wants and says that matters. No one else or point of view even gets on the air at all unless they're more conservative. That constitutes debate now. To rub it in, commercial news coverage is now so dumbed down that you cannot tell elections apart from professional wrestling. As burlap-skinned pundits from who knows where ignore real issues as they analyze the commercials. Our careers are now chosen for us. Bill Clinton tells us that as ever more desperately competitive techno-termites, we should expect to have to retrain every 5 years just to hang on to the same dumbass job. While in Newt's utopia, everyone's thrown out on their own, forced to scramble all over the financial district as an independent contractor. No unions, no health benefits, no job guarantee when you wake up the next day, forever trying to out-hustle each other for a shrinking number of temporary jobs on the high-speed techno treadmill, begging to be thrown another bone. Like they're running along on the gerbil wheel with their briefcases, the money rains just out of reach. So they won't wind up starving in the streets or in one of Bill and Uncle Newt's shiny new jails. Our God is being replaced by our flag as the deity never to desecrate or question in any way. If the stars and stripes are properly represented on your t-shirt, you're a patriotic American. But if they're printed on your jeans or even on a coffee mug, you could soon go to jail if Newt and his thugs have their way. And as the flag replaces the God, corporate logos assume the prior functions of the flag. I pledge allegiance to Nike. Do not desecrate Coke
or Pepsi. And above all, don't you dare talk any shit about Mickey Mouse or McDonald's, or they will sue your ass. Instead of hanging portraits of Joseph Stalin in our living room out of fear, we pony up to buy mass-produced limited edition collector plates of Ronald Reagan, Elvis, John Wayne, Diana, and the Gulf War. And look at all the baggy military-style clothes we're being told to buy. America's #1 fashion designer could just as well be Fidel Castro. We put more and more people in jail per capita than any other country on earth for smaller and smaller offenses. Instead of rounding up the Jews, we're rounding up the blacks, thanks to the new federal crime bill signed into law by its chief cheerleader, Bill Clinton. Even now, some Americans are winding up in Siberian-style labor camps, such as the person who sent me letters from a state prison in Wisconsin where he'd agreed to go to boot camp after being busted for a pot in his college dorm room. They had people running out in the snow with no winter clothing on, carrying big logs for 10 miles a day. And if they gave out or they threw up on the ground, they were forced by the guards to eat their own vomit because otherwise they were wasting food and wasting taxpayers' money. And for those of you who miss the good old days, chain gangs are back too. Meanwhile, what illegal drug is most widely abused by teenagers in America today?
Cigarettes, alcohol.
Steroids. Just like those not too distant days of old, when year after year, communist countries like East Germany would trot out their genetically engineered, pharmaceutically factory-farmed walruses and expect the whole world to believe that this was their women's Olympic swim team. Now in Soviet America, bodybuilding's all the rage. Join the Marky Mark Master Race or you won't get laid. More often than not, finding out too late, self-obsession leaves no time for being loved anyway. And if you're poor, it gets worse. Here's how state-of-the-art segregation works. Ruin the schools, yank away affirmative action, let the slums get worse, pump up the drug supply, and when to no one's surprise cities blow sky high, the only aid from Uncle Scam to calm down all those justifiably angry people is midnight basketball. Not midnight education classes, midnight community youth centers, midnight homeless shelters, or heaven forbid, midnight hip-hop and music and poetry events. No, here, doggy, have a basketball. Be a good Schwarzenegger. This'll keep you out of trouble. Can't let a potential Michael Jordan gold mine go to waste. That's all we figure your kind's good for anyway. And if you're too old for dribbling games, wrong sex, unathletic, or you just don't like basketball, well, liquor stores down there on the corner. Shut up and sell the crack the government slips you till we throw your ass in jail or you get shot by one of your own, just so long as you hurry up and die. Even the KGB's files are now open. Why not ours? Well, because we might notice, again, according to the Spy article, symptoms of American Sovietization in its numbing, crippling stage. For instance, 16 of the nation's 17 nuclear weapons plants were found to be in horrible, toxic disrepair, while the 17th, a victim of chronic construction problems, has never been able to open. The cost of a total fix is estimated at between $100 and $200 billion. So the U.S. Department of Energy has a craftier idea. Lower the safety standards. And in the fine Chernobyl tradition, in November of '96, a semi-truck full of nuclear weapons crashed near Omaha, Nebraska, and the government didn't tell anybody it happened for a month. And to this day, we spend millions of dollars a year maintaining a 35-year-old super-secret concrete bunker in Virginia to hoard our most prized and precious bureaucrats,
during that great nuclear war we spend billions each year preparing for that never seems to arrive. And in classic Soviet speak, a Federal Emergency Management Agency spokesman told Time magazine, "I'd be glad to tell you all about it, but I'd have to kill you afterward." And like the Soviet Union, wasting so much money on an all-consuming military machine has left the rest of the country on the verge of collapse. National security, my ass. We're headed down their exact same Soviet path. It ain't just communism that's dead. Ever notice capitalism's dying too? How quickly we forget, how easily we ignore, how eager we are to have our history rewritten into one more narcotic to dull the pain of how completely we're being screwed, of the destruction of the so-called American dream by the very people who dangle it at us night after night on TV saying, "Buy more stuff! Buy more stuff! You will obey! Buy more stuff! Let us suck your tax money and throw it away on more and more bombs and weapons to protect you from some cartoon enemy of the weak like Saddam Hussein or big bad North Korea so you can live free to buy more stuff." This can't last forever. A lot of people are catching on now, to the point where the Soviet-style CNN American propaganda machine is already shifting into damage control overdrive. Okay, we know, you know that the life you took for granted and the American dream is going down the toilet. And since nothing's ever your fault, and it's sure as hell never our corporate fault, you ditto heads gotta go out and blame somebody. Don't work together and solve the problem and threaten our little game. Blame somebody. Blame the niggers. Blame the Mexicans. Blame the immigrants. Blame the homeless. Blame your kids. Blame the Japanese, environmentalists, homosexuals, musicians, gun control advocates, Satan. And sure enough, after a steady diet of scapegoating, America is slowly starting to crack and split into smaller, separate, hateful, isolationist nations. But unlike Russia, there's no clear place to draw the borders. The tapestry of factions weaves across the whole country. The South, militias, African Americans, Latinos, Southern California Disney whites, sports bar yahoos, all aiming at each other, stirred up and manipulated by outside forces who see this as their last hope to keep the little people in line as they plunder the rest of the planet. What would happen if a good chunk of the other peoples and places corporate America sucks dry finally seized their sovereignty and natural resources back and leveled sanctions against the United States, like we've done against Iraq or South Africa? I hope to hell another great world war never ever happens, but if it does, I have a feeling it could be every other people on earth against the united corporate state of America. Has America become the new Soviet Union? So far, the answer appears to be classified. I forgot how I was usually starting out these portions of the evening. We have to have a moment of silence. Seinfeld is over. I said silence!
What's wrong with entertainment?
There, wasn't that more interesting and entertaining than watching Seinfeld?
Anyway, this is the portion of the show, speaking of Seinfeld, where we talk about censorship. And this time, I'm probably not going to go so much into the Tipper Gores of the world, because to me, they're not nearly as big a censorship problem right now as Disney, Time Warner, Rupert Murdoch, and the way they deliberately omit stories and facts out of the news about events that actually affect people's lives that people might want to know about and stuff, and instead get everybody focused on, what are we going to do without Seinfeld? All those propaganda mags and People Magazine and Entertainment Weekly, as if you can tell them apart at this point, between Time and Newspeak, all in 1 week. The same thing was on the cover. What'll we do without Seinfeld? This is their idea of a national crisis, to sort of distract people from the real ones. What is presented as food for thought are things like this article I got out of the Sunday Comical Examiner a while back, written by a kind of yuppie soccer momish columnist named Joan Ryan, whose qualifications for writing on the editorial page are that she's a successful sports writer. The picture with the column shows a male hand pointing a handgun at a radio. And the title is, "Whiners and Gripers, You May Take a Back Seat." This is the Thanksgiving column, no less. Once a year, says Joan Ryan, we can use the pause button and blot out the moans of the victimized in our culture, celebrating instead all we hold dear. Quote, clearly no country is more in need of the Thanksgiving holiday than we. Guess she never went to Rwanda. For 1 day a year, we give the complaining a rest and acknowledge that life isn't so horribly wretched. In that spirit, I have compiled a list of things for which I am thankful. Electric blankets. Towels from the dryer. Steve Young. Wide padded bicycle seats. Helen Hunt. Free valet parking. Refunds. Any movie with Harrison Ford. Credit card gas pumps. The X-Files. Parking meters with time left. There, I feel calm and satisfied already. This is what passes for journalism and editorial discourse in the newspapers we are supposed to believe are accurate reflections of public record. This is an example of how the national entertainment state wants the rest of us to think or not to think, depending on your point of view. I'm tired of hearing about those homeless people. I'm suffering from compassion burnout. I'd much rather have hot towels from the dryer and a Harrison Ford movie and be thankful for the good things in life. You know, they all say, like this Marie Antoinette columnist here, you know, the yuppie soccer mom from hell and all who sail with them. Don't worry, be greedy. The economy is booming. It says so in the Wall Street Journal and the USA Today. The economy must be booming. See, everything's all better again. For who? Well, even though the Marie Antoinette-ish columnist says we should forget about the whiners and gripers today, as of Thanksgiving in 1997, 2.1 million people in the most powerful country in the world are homeless. And the food banks are already strained to the breaking point, and we haven't even really hit the full brunt of the welfare cuts yet. Government estimation, along with Columbia University, in a study, they said that they think now 22% of American kids are growing up poor.
and 6.1 million of them are growing up hungry. And slashing all the benefits for the kids and the poor and the homeless, the budget for welfare is only 3% of the national budget, and that's what they chose to slash so they can cut taxes for the rich. That's their real, in-practice definition of family values. What amazes me about how mean-spirited it's been, we've got to balance the budget on the backs of the poor. Never mind that Ross Perot or Michael Jordan or Bill Gates could balance the budget, as if we need to balance the budget in the first place. Of course, one of the people wanting to take credit for this is our beloved President Clinton, or should, in this case, we say the Clinton-Gingrich regime, or whatever. Last August proudly proclaimed that welfare reform must be a success because 1.4 million people on the welfare rolls are gone. Gone where? Another 1.9 million are quote-unquote gone since Clinton first took office, and I think we can figure out where some of them have gone just by looking at how many people are sleeping on Haight Street, Market Street, Castro Street, neighborhood streets, you name it. That's where they have gone. But another one of the solutions is what they're calling workfare. Get a fucking job. We're not going to give you any more handouts. I mean, this was the message delivered among other people to, according to the Progressive, an estimated 330,000 kids in wheelchairs got their benefits cut off by the family values mob and their welfare reform. And of course, they want women to be at home taking care of their children, but in order to get any sort of aid for them at all, they have to get a job and not be home to take care of your children. Often, these are workfare jobs, which is creating a sub-minimum wage slave class in this country, designed to drive down the real wages and, of course, replace high-paid union workers with, shall we say, volunteers or whatever. In other words, you work that or you get the rest of your payments cut off. So people who have to go out and find jobs to get their payments are quitting school en masse to do it too. The City University in New York City estimated that they are losing 13,000 students just at that school for people who had to go get workfare jobs instead. And a welfare official in New York City, when asked about this, said, well, what good is school going to do them anyway? Yeah. In Baltimore, their Health and Human Services Department estimated that 17,000 people will now be coming on the job market because their welfare payments got cut off, and the state of Maryland responded with 66 new job openings. Where are these people going to go? One way to solve this would be to reduce everybody to a 30-hour week at the same wages, since after all, you read the Wall Street Journal or Fortune or Forbes, and profits are booming for corporations. They can afford to pay you 40-hour worth of wages for 30 hours of work, and then somebody else could do the rest of the job and also get paid. But instead, we have things like the Bay Guardian's report that cops in Vallejo, California, are now raiding people's apartments and projects and tearing them apart for people suspected of being welfare cheats, including an old lady or two. Immigrants, under the new rules, if they get picked up for something or apply for any kind of benefit whatsoever or get caught in the net, they can be deported for small crimes that happened 25 years ago, or at least held in detention until they can find somebody to try and get them out, which most of the time doesn't work that way. In order to keep this kind of blatant cruelty and fascism going and people to not start asking too many questions, you have to direct their attention elsewhere by demonizing and criminalizing the very underclass that you're throwing out in the street. And we've seen repeated bashing of black women who have children, the subtle message, of course, being that all poverty would magically go away if people of that skin color would quit having so many babies. You hear that in veiled terms so much. It's the fault of the moms, but especially it's the fault of their kids. If you believe what you see on TV or read in the San Francisco Comical or whatever, you'd think that there was gang violence going on outside and inside this room. Youth, they've always been bad, and now they're getting worse and worse and worse. People like William Bennett, who I will get to a little later, have coined a term for this new generation of youth. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's a drive-by, it's super predators. They're everywhere. The sky is falling. Super predators. Here in a church with mostly white faces, there may not be too many super predators, but you can feel them out there, can't you? You can just feel them. They're 14 years old and they already know how to fire a gun and to steal and to hotwire a car and smoke crack and this, that, and the other. These goddamn kids, you never know what they'll do next. We got to lock up these poor kids because they're unsightly on street corners. They drive down the property values and things like that. Super predators. At a time when in reality, even the government's own statistics show crime, including violent crime in all categories, has steadily been going down. Even juvenile crime has been going down. And also what's interesting is when they start trying to blame the cause of super predators on everything except how screwed up our economic system is and people in the inner cities don't get good educations and cutting off people's benefits and everything. Oh, it must be Marilyn Manson's fault. Oh, it must be Snoop Doggy Dogg's fault. Oh, it must be sexually explicit television's fault or something. Even though European and Japanese kids, for example, see a lot of the same violent TV shows people do in this country, but their crime rate isn't nearly what ours is, and there is no talk of an onslaught of wicked super predators or anything like that. And meanwhile, since 1986, the reports of child abuse in this country have multiplied by a factor of 4. But are there really super predators, or is this just another way of trying to bash people, divide them, classify, cage, you name it? In the 50s, there was the Red Scare, and if you wanted to go after somebody, you could name them a suspected communist and get them kicked out of their job and this, that, and the other. Now, through the same tactics, there's a new category, suspected gang member. Besides trashing affirmative action and this new banning bilingual education move they're having in California and things like that, another way of resegregating the country in a most fascistic way is just start labeling people suspected gang members and stigmatizing them accordingly. For example, in Denver, the Denver police, on their list of suspected gang members, it includes 2 out of 3 black kids in Denver. Have all somehow made the list, with hardly any white ones on the list at all. In Orange County, they have 20,000 people on the suspected gang member list, 9,000 of whom have never been arrested. But they don't just include youth on it. A 38-year-old Mexican mother of 4 has reported being stopped repeatedly in Orange County for being a suspected gang member and pulled out of her car and frisked and detained, most likely because of the color of her skin and her Spanish last name. You know, you don't need the white hood anymore if you've got a cop's uniform on, and you can label anybody you want a suspected gang member. And these suspected gang member lists are going to the FBI. They're also being circulated among landlords. Where in Aurora, Colorado, for example, a suburb of Denver, there's been documented cases of single fathers who want to be a part of their children's lives being forbidden to see them lest the child's mother and the child be kicked out of a public housing project for associating with a suspected gang member. And once you're guilty of being a suspected gang member on somebody's list, it's very hard to get off that list or figure out how far it has gone. The LA Sheriff's Department's list has 47% of the black men in the LA County ages 21 to 24. And again, people are repeatedly stopped, as they are in other cities where this goes on. And sometimes it's a question of shoot first and ask questions later. The most recent case that actually got some publicity was a college-bound high school senior who just happened to be black was walking in Times Square in New York City, and a cop gunned him down for flashing a silver object, the wrapper to a Three Musketeers bar, which he was about to eat. And he survived, but I would guess is probably going to sue New York's ass off for that. But the sick part is that San Francisco, among others, allots 1, 2, maybe more millions of dollars in the city budget every year for paying out police brutality claims. They'd rather spend millions paying off brutality victims than reform the police department. Another ask questions later policy that's real scary is in Indianapolis, suspected crack house, the cops just come and bulldoze the house. Kind of like the way the Israelis bulldoze Palestinians' houses or something like that. It's happening here now. That's the kind of climate that labeling people suspected gang members and having everybody assume that somebody of a different skin color must be some super predator who's going to shoot you and is high out of their mind on crack or whatever. Another way of resegregating that's been happening in New York City and they're proposing for Union Square in San Francisco is what they call business improvement districts, where they sort of cordon off with unseen walls a selected area or neighborhood so they can gentrify it, and to keep undesirable elements like wrong skin color or homeless or not yuppie dressed up enough out of the area, they hire their own private police forces to keep everything nice and clean, which they want to do for the hotels and the shopping areas around Macy's and Union Square downtown. I mean, all of this, in a way, it kind of reeks as a subtle Cold War or even Civil War being fought in this country, waged aggressively by the haves against the have-nots. And knowing hell to pay, the people on the higher income bracket are then, out of fear of the wicked super predators or whatever, you'll see the growth of so-called gated communities. An oxymoron if I've ever heard one. And more people buying these gigantic four-wheel drive so-called sport utility vehicles to protect them from all kinds of predators or what. Whatever, don't get no Cadillac. That's just some grandpa car. We'll get a big old four-wheeler that guzzles even more gas than a Cadillac does, costs twice as much, and get a big old rhino bumper on the front. So just in case soccer mom from hell is going down to pick up her precious artifact child from school or whatever, if she spots some super predator near the child after the child's in the truck, which just happens to be some kid on the playground waving goodbye to their friend or something, ooh, suspected gang member, mow them down. Have you noticed how people who drive those yuppie Cadillacs in this town, they don't drive them very well? They think because they've got this big, tough rhino bumper vehicle, they can drive down the middle of two-way streets. Stop signs do not apply to them. And in Colorado, where I'm originally from, it somehow makes them invincible to ice and snow on windy mountain roads. The accident rate has gone up accordingly with people like this. And thankfully, what is it, only about 1 in 10 people who own those things ever take them off the road? I mean, just imagine what the woods would look like if they all took them off the road or whatever. I mean, maybe some gulches would be filled up with these hulks for archaeologists to dig up later. And another way of waging war against the have-nots is to attack their spokespeople, their messengers, their artists, their musicians, through things like the infamous tipper sticker, the parental advisory notice, whose victims are disproportionately black artists. And how this figures in a tool of segregation is that many chain stores like Walmart or Kmart will not carry any product with a tipper sticker on it. And of course, this also leads to a lot of censorship behind the scenes that we never even hear about, with major label fat cats up in the offices making artists take songs off their albums that might get them a tipper sticker because they don't want to offend Walmart or whatever, or issuing special dumbed down editions of some albums exclusively for Walmart.
such as the version of Nirvana in Utero that the band foolishly agreed to, which got rid of the fetuses on the back and changed the title of Rape Me to Waif Me, whatever that means. And White Zombie has had this done to them. And does anybody know I think she's a country or bluegrass or acoustic folk female artist who had the album cover with the pill capsule breaking over a town at night and sprinkling little snowflakes down on it? Can't remember who it is. No, definitely not, no. Ironically, here you go. Alanis Morissette has all kinds of swear words on her album. No tipper sticker. She's white, and they put a lot of money into her jagged little sales and everything. But if she were black, you'd never see her in Walmart, that's for sure. Anyway, the album with the pill breaking over a town, which was meant as a comment against Prozac, was banned from Walmart for being pro-drug. So they changed the cover just for Walmart. What's that? She's white, yeah. Sheryl Crow's last album was banned from Walmart because it had a song attacking Walmart on it. Walmart justifies this in-house censorship, saying they're trying to protect innocent, fragile eggshell minds from explicit sex and violence. Yet the song about Walmart on Sheryl Crow's album, and I feel weird defending the very existence of Sheryl Crow, but I must in this case. It was a song attacking Walmart for selling guns to people in their department store, and they banned it, which means you cannot buy an album that mentions guns, but you can trot across the store and buy the actual gun and shoot people with it. Again, family values on parade. But now there's a new movement to start slapping tipper stickers or a movie-style rating system on live shows. There's a bill in the state legislature in Michigan. One has popped up in Georgia. Another is going to pop up pretty soon in South Carolina. And this is yet another pungent example of how America is slowly turning into the Soviet Union. You remember, in the Soviet Union, you used to have to audition for government censor boards if you were going to play music in front of other people. You had to be certified professional by the government censors, or you were not allowed to play anywhere. And this was in Czechoslovakia and East Germany and other countries, Poland as well, I believe. And that's what this bill would do to America, where they would appoint censorship boards. And can you imagine the kind of people Pete Wilson or Bill Clinton would appoint to censorship boards like this? Just imagine if Al Gore was in charge of appointing the censorship boards. And then you would have to audition for these people or they wouldn't let you play anywhere. In a way, it's a monopolistic big-time promoter Bill Graham wet dream come true, because that way there could only be big, safe, corporate major label shows, because the Board of Censorship is too busy to have to listen to every little punk band that wants to play at Gilman Street or something. They don't have time for that. It would just be much easier if those bands didn't play and weren't allowed to exist. That's what this kind of a rating system could lead to. Plus, how are you supposed to know from night to night what somebody is going to do in a live performance? There were a few Dead Kennedy shows where the audience was kind, ho-ho, enough to tear my pants off. Did that make me an X-rated performer by default or not? Thankfully, there were no boards of censorships to find out. And luckily, some of the bigger acts like Pearl Jam and R.E.M. and even No Doubt have announced that they will not play in any state that passes a concert rating law. And the excuse they're using, the reason they're citing that America needs these live show censorship laws is, of course, your friend and mine, Marilyn Manson. Ooh. Now, I have to admit, I'm a little bit jealous of the guy. I mean, can you imagine what I would give to be able to tie up entire state legislatures in North Carolina and New Jersey, tie up Utah as well, have them arguing back and forth on company time on whether to ban my ass from their nice, clean state venues, thus wasting that many days of potential bribe taking and passing corrupt laws and... In South Carolina, thanks to a Christian Coalition puppet who was running for office, Marilyn Manson was paid $40,000 by the University of South Carolina not to play. Nice work if you can get it. Number 2 target in the live arena lately has been Rage Against the Machine, where police departments have been circulating memos to other police and sheriff's departments all along their last tour's route, trying to get the cops to forcibly shut their shows down, claiming they promote cop killing and they're anti-law and order and things like that. In Texas, a bill was passed and gleefully signed into law by George Bush's son, George W. Bush, or George W., if you call in Texasese. They forbid state institutions to own stock in any company that traffics in anything immoral or obscene. And their target in this case was forcing the University of Texas to withdraw millions of dollars in stock money from the Seagram's liquor empire because they now own MCA. They bought it from Matsushita, and MCA distributes Interscope, home of Marilyn Manson, Death Row Records, Tupac Shakur, Snoop Doggy Dogg, Dr. Dre, etc., etc. This attempt being to bully Seagram's into dropping Interscope in hopes that they won't be able to find another distributor. They just had this bill in the California state legislature to try and limit state institutions from investing their pension money in any corporation that traffics in wicked, violent, illegal music or something. And of course they trotted out some old guy whose kid had just killed themselves, and 13-year-old dropped out of stool, alcoholic, but no, he blamed it on the music. Marilyn Manson, the Sex Pistols, and Dead Kennedys. I finally did it! Finally got one! Eat your heart out, Bad Religion. And if that's not enough, we have had anti-music hearings in the Senate once again. They didn't make the headlines as big as the Tipper hearings in 1985 because they went by so quickly. In a way, the people who staged this one were smart. Instead of having day after day of testimony until Frank Zappa and even John Denver showed up to testify against the censorship proposals of Tipper and her friends, this time, the hearings were only 2 hours long, and no one from the artistic community was allowed to testify. Chuck D was ready to testify. I'd been approached, but I wrote back the person trying to get me there saying, yeah, I'll bet you they're not going to let me in, aren't they? And sure enough, they didn't let anybody like that in. Michael Eric Dyson of Hip Hop Confidential was also not allowed to speak. Instead, it was a roll call of the usual suspects. Senator Joseph Lieberman of Connecticut, an extreme right-wing Democrat who's been for banning all kinds of things since he got into office, not only sat on the committee, but hopped across the room and testified on his behalf as well. Interrupted all the other witnesses to pontificate on his views on the subject, all of which were pretty toxic, as you might guess. And sure enough, they dug up somebody from North Dakota who testified about how Marilyn Manson caused his child to kill himself in his bedroom because the Antichrist Superstar CD just happened to be in the stereo when the kid was found dead. Also, they had one of the more prominent music bashers as of late, the Clarence Thomas of the Tipper world, C. Dolores Tucker, of the National Political Congress of Black Women, who at times has even waged an Operation Rescue level campaign against rap music, including such rap bands, at least according to her, as Nine Inch Nails, blocking the entrance to stores in Washington, D.C. to keep people from going in and buying albums and things like that. She has a powerful ally, namely William Bennett. They were introduced to each other by Barbara Wyatt, who is the current president of, yes, the Parents Music Resource Center. Tipper's organization flies below the radar screen, and Tipper doesn't have to go out and do the dirty work herself anymore, but they are still very much alive, networking demagogues with each other. William Bennett, you may recall, was George Bush's drug czar. The one who, when he first assumed power, said that within 2 years there will be no vacancy in any prison in the United States. He also called for public beheading of convicted drug dealers and for making every resident of Washington, D.C. carry a pass, South African style, and for rounding up all youth suspected of using drugs in Washington, D.C. and locking them up on barges in the Potomac River. Now the corporate media paints him as this arbiter of our virtues and this great moralist we all have to listen to and buy his allegedly best-selling book and all that. And together, he and Tucker make quite a powerful team. The National Political Congress of Black Women goes back far enough in time that she has the ear of people like the NAACP, who have supported her, without, of course, getting the other side of the story. And she and Bennett were able to raid a board meeting of the Time Warner Empire and bully them into dropping Interscope before MCA picked him up, and are now trying to get MCA to do the same thing, as well as marching into, I believe it's who distributes the Maverick label, to object to the new Prodigy single. And this time Tucker was accompanied by none other than Gloria Steinem, who she now successfully hoodwinked into joining the music-bashing censorship empire. And like William Bennett, the deeper you dig into the background of C. Dolores Tucker, the worse she smells. As far back as 1966, the Philadelphia Inquirer named her one of the city's 10 worst slumlords. Later, she was still able to become Commonwealth Secretary of the state of Pennsylvania, where she had staff members write speeches for her, for which she pocketed over $65,000 in honorariums. Pennsylvania Governor Milton Schaap finally fired her for misuse of public office in 1977. But her tactics continue like this to this day. According to Rock and Rap Confidential, both Interscope and Death Row Records filed suit against her in late 1995 for attempting an extortion job whereby Death Row Records would be turned over to her control. And among the threats that came towards Suge Knight through her attorney was that if he didn't agree to this and knuckle under to Tucker, he would spend the rest of his life in jail. Suge Knight is now in jail. Also, after this Senate hearing, when Michael Eric Dyson was rebutting Tucker's testimony before the committee outside in the hallway to the press, since he wasn't allowed to testify himself, Tucker's husband pushed his way through the crowd and told him, and this was caught on film apparently, next time you show up here, you better bring an extra pair of glasses because you're going to need one. This is the way the Tuckers operate. Dolores Tucker is also suing the estate of Tupac Shakur, among other people, claiming that the lyrics on his All Eyes on Me album ruined her sex life. And she then filed suit against Newsweek magazine for printing a little article about the first lawsuit against Tupac. I mean, she plays very, very, very dirty, and in some ways is a more heavy-handed gangsta than any of her targets. Meanwhile, the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, otherwise known as NARAS, sponsor of the Grammy Awards, their head, Michael Green, who at one time was a vocal and articulate opponent of Tipper Gore and record ratings, is now claiming that there's too many drugs in the music industry and proposing piss testing musicians for drugs. And suspending contracts of major label artists for drugs and deducting the costs of forced rehab from their royalties. Of course, no mention of coke-addled executives up in the major label offices or people with all their pro-drunk driving and wife-beating songs down in Nashville. That doesn't seem to be a problem. Admittedly, I too think there has been a drug problem in the music industry, and I kind of wonder where all the drugs keep popping up as soon as any youth culture gets too strong. I also wonder why it is that so many people I've known personally who've been in bands who've signed to major labels wind up coming out the other end hooked on junk. You know, it's almost as though a chemical per diem is a great way to keep your artists under control. Here you can't have any more dope till you do this video, this interview, this tour, and you have to be here at this date, and you have to be here at that date, and you can't talk to any more of your old friends, blah, 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 blah. It's a way of controlling the artist when management and attorney and major labels control all the purse strings. I think most damaging of all these attacks on music was partly perpetrated by a couple of short-sighted heavy metal labels themselves. In North Eugene, Oregon, there was an armed robbery of a convenience store where 4 guys came in and beat the clerk to death and almost beat the other clerk to death. She responded by suing Cannibal Corpse, Deicide, Roadrunner Records, and Metal Blade Records for damages, claiming the music caused these kids to do these things. And rather than fight this thing through court and get it thrown out, Metal Blade and Roadrunner decided they'd save themselves some legal bills and settle out of court and pay her. Now there is a legal precedent that other people can use in other states to sue bands saying, see, these bands and these labels admitted this music causes people to commit violent crimes, therefore we can sue you or arrest you. That was an incredibly dumb thing to do on the part of Roadrunner and Metal Blade, and may they burn in hell for it. In other places in the world, it's getting as bad or worse. In France, a rapper is now doing jail time for dissing the police. In Brazil, the people in a band called Planet Hemp were dragged off the stage by the cops in front of 7,000 people for advocating the use of marijuana, which carries a mandatory 3 to 15 years in jail in Brazil. No parole or anything, no bail either. The singer for Sponge got arrested for saying naughty words on stage in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And the rapper, you may know about Sibo up in Sacramento, who had his parole revoked and he got put back in the state prison system after he put out an album dissing the police. Meanwhile, the lead prosecutor in the case against me, clear back in '87 before they went after Two Live Crew or anything, admitted last year in an interview with the Washington Post that he regretted the whole thing, that he thought it was a mistake, that it never should have happened, and we were just a bunch of prima donna prosecutors, etc., which I want to shove that in the face of everybody else who keeps trying to make political hay for themselves by busting musicians or comic book stores or pirate radio or what have you. I mean, for that matter, who's more harmful, Tupac Shakur, Snoop Dogg, or Jerry Springer? That is the closest thing I've seen yet to a Roman gladiator show on TV. Forget gangsta rap. What about gangsta talk show hosts? I seriously wonder if they screen all the people who want to be on that show for length of arrest record. The longer, the better. And then they sprinkle crack on all the week-old croissants in the dressing room or something. Where now, every night, people tear each other's hair out, punch the hell out of each other. Jerry is planted way back in the audience so they never beat the shit out of him like we all wish they would. Well, the audience, like... And then they always go, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. Whenever people start punching the shit out of each other, they're all going, Jerry, Jerry, Jerry. The worst one I saw, I blundered into one where a woman who was born with no hands and no feet was sitting helplessly in a chair crying while the audience booed her for arguing that she had a right to be loved and have a boyfriend. That was sick. That was sick. But you can always relieve yourself because then Jenny Jones comes on right afterwards and makes up all the little goth chicks into normal women and stuff so their mothers approve. There's one I saw where the goth girl was practically in tears when they brought her back out as a little cutie. It was like, I look like a Spice Girl. Jenny Jones, is that so bad? And of course, they often have to have enough plastic surgery people and whatnot to have lots of bouncing big tits every other show on that one, too. People beat each other up on Jerry Springer, then you see the tits, and that's what counts for dialogue. Yeah, I mean, they say kids have no values. What about adults having no values? Who are the real super predators? Newt, Pete Wilson, Willie Brown, or better yet, how about these corporate executives who pay themselves tens of millions of dollars in bonuses while they rip apart families' lives by laying off thousands and thousands of people? And it's well documented that in areas where there's massive layoffs, the child abuse and spousal battery rate goes way, way, way up. So much for family values. I mean, that was definitely what I would call super predators. For example, this Levi's executive, Tom Tusher, who was reported an article in the San Francisco Chronicle, or the Examiner, maybe both, no less, of getting a $100 million bonus, while in the same article they mentioned Levi just laid off about 6,400 people in Texas because they're moving the plant thanks to the NAFTA treaty and all. I think another good candidate for super predators would be these giant HMO corporations taking over and buying up hospitals and turning them into for-profit institutions where if you're really, really, really sick or terminally ill, they'll refuse to treat you because it might cost them too much insurance money. Woman just had a baby, get them back out the door. We don't want to have to pay any more insurance money for that. Surgery is literally slice and dice in a case like this. The worst example I've heard lately of taking advantage of sick people for profit, keeping in mind other countries in the industrialized world put health care and family care as a very big priority in their national budget, but not in this country. A friend of mine who overcame a really horrible drug problem was then told that all the heroin he did had created a disease in the gums of his mouth, and the only way he was ever going to be able to save his mouth was to have all his teeth pulled over a 2-year period for a mere $20,000. He figured maybe one of the things he should do is get the hell out of America to clear his head, and he went to Amsterdam, where, with no question asked, they issued him a health card so he could see a doctor without having to go through one referral and another referral and insurance forms and all this bullshit. Where they looked at his gums, gave him an antibiotic, and bingo, all the germs were gone and his teeth are fine. And that is an example of super predators in our healthcare system. Corporations are running amok as super predators. Nike pays people 20 cents an hour in Vietnam to make those lovely $200 tennis shoes, and Disney pays people 30 cents in Haiti for some of their products. And as more and more of these jobs are moved overseas so they can pay slave wages, if that, believe it or not, it's still legal in this country, whereby if you ship your company's plant overseas and throw a bunch of people out of work, it's a tax write-off. It is beneficial tax-wise to throw people out of work in this country. Wall Street loves it too, of course. Stock goes way up if you throw people out of work. And the person who dates back to Nixon and Gerald Ford days, who Clinton reappointed as head of the Federal Reserve Board, and thus possibly one of the most powerful people in this country, Alan Greenspan, has said that 8 million unemployed in America is essential for a healthy economy. Also, the other things that you can write off on your taxes if you're a corporation is you can write off $100 million bonuses to chief executives and their giant salaries, and you can even write off anti-pollution fines. And meanwhile, even though more and more people are being thrown out on the street from welfare cuts, corporate welfare is alive and well. Last year, we spent $100 million subsidizing M&M's, McDonald's, and Campbell's Soup, among other companies, in efforts to open markets overseas, which is chicken feed compared to the $7.6 billion spent to subsidize arms manufacturers trying to sell weapons that kill people overseas. In this light, somebody like Newt Gingrich is merely a sideshow. He makes a great cartoon character to throw darts at. I mean, he even looks like a pig. And his contract on America, when they were starting to try to implement those ideas, they invited the robber barons and the corporate lobbyists directly into congressional committee rooms to write the laws for them, to gut all the anti-pollution regulations and labor safety and capital gains tax laws and things like that. Admittedly, I kind of liked his orphanage proposal. He just got the target wrong. You remember why he wanted to take all poor kids, mainly minority kids? William Bennett started this idea, by the way, and lock them up in orphanages and then provide no government money to run them. But maybe what we need to stop these real super predators is to take rich kids from their families and put them in orphanages so they have to grow up around real people and experience real things instead of prep schools, tennis lessons, and the stock market. I mean, in a way, Newt and his Newtsies serve... Thank you, Molly Ivins. They serve as kind of a smoke screen where people get so scared of them that they think, well, things could be worse, so we better rally behind our fuzzy-wuzzy, yuppie alleged liberals like Bill Clinton and Dianne Feinstein and Willie Brown and Albert Gore and people like that. I mean, granted, Clinton may yet go down in history as one of the most crooked presidents ever, but not for any of the reasons that are trumpeted in the corporate press. I mean, Monica's magic orifice makes great Jerry Springer type news and stuff. Seems to me if it's really that important, maybe the way to solve it would be to have a national coloring contest where you could have an outline of a male weenie, and then whoever colors it in closest to the president's alleged distinguishing characteristics gets to give him a blowjob live on Larry King, and then we can move on. Or maybe Ice-T had an even better idea. Put them all on Jerry Springer. Clinton and his hoes out in the room. And then Hillary comes on and beats them all up. But seeing as how the Reagan and Bush got away with Contragate, drug running, assassinations, killing 5,000 people in Panama, keeping the hostages in Iran until after Reagan beat Carter in the election, letting savings and loan crooks run off with billions of dollars that we wind up paying for, all of those were impeachable offenses. I mean, if Clinton goes down just because of his dick compared to what they got away with, we really are living in the fall of Rome. We really are. As far as I'm concerned, the real reasons to impeach Clinton and every single creature around him holding public office of either party at a time when there isn't really much difference between the two parties. We're basically like Mexico now. Instead of the PRI being a one-party state complete with its own death squads, in this country we have a one-party state, the corporate party, masquerading as a two-party state where they prepare to fight over little things and then magically agree behind everybody's back when it's time to throw kids in wheelchairs out in the street or bash immigrants or give tax breaks to the rich or something like that. There seems to be very little debate on the matter. As far as I'm concerned, Clinton's real crimes are the way he's basically letting Wall Street run the whole goddamn country. What's ever good for global corporations must be good for everyone else. And being a supposed opponent of this as a Democrat and everything, it makes it easier for the corporate regime to get away with things that people would have fought harder if it was coming out of the fang-dripping mouth of George Bush. I mean, they knew people were sick of him and didn't want his face on TV every night anymore, so they gave a fuzzy-wuzzy yuppie face instead, who feels our pain as he inflicts more and more of it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, gutting the welfare system ought to be an impeachable crime. When that went through, and the crime bill went through, and the anti-immigrant bill went through, it's almost as if the Clintonoids and the Newtsies were dancing Ring Around the Rosie in the halls of the Capitol building, singing what is obviously our national anthem in their eyes: kill, 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 kill the poor. Kill, 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 kill the poor. Watergate-style dirty tricks have gone up as well. In '96, according to, I believe it was either the Progressive or the Nation, reported the government admitted to 839 wiretaps, up 20% from the year before. And in 1993, the FBI at least admitted to 300 break-ins, 6 times the last available statistic on that, which was 85 under Reagan. And Clinton's drug war budget is triple Reagan's last drug war budget. It's almost as though the arms race has shifted from the Soviet Union to a war on the American people. Instead of the military-industrial complex, we have the prison-industrial complex. At a time when they can't even come up with a scarier big bad wolf than Saddam Hussein and North Korea, the arms race goes up anyway. They talk about the Clinton telephone scandal. The real telephone scandal is when he calls up from the White House offices to lobby foreign countries to buy more American weapons. There he is as the chief executive of the land, lobbying for private corporations to make them more money. Instead of a Cold War, it's all about more and more dollars now, where the State Department itself is actively involved in closing arms deals with dictators and oil sheiks and foreign countries and all. And even embassy employees are graded on their ability to market American goods. The CIA is now authorized to do industrial spying on behalf of American corporations. And in a move not even George Bush could stomach, Clinton lifted a ban on selling really high-tech, badass military hardware like fighter planes and tanks and stuff to countries in Latin America with dismal human rights records over the years. 50 million just got handed to the Colombian death squads under the claim that it was to fight drugs. The usual excuse. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the real reason to impeach these people is this whole attitude of sell everything, privatize. Better yet, we're giving it away. National parks, we're giving them away, starting with the Presidio in San Francisco. And the privatizing mania has trickled all the way down to local levels too, like the state of Texas. Until people got wind of it and moved to stop it, was going to turn the operation of their entire welfare system over to Lockheed. Of course, the profit motive in a private company running the welfare system is to kick as many people off as possible and pocket the money. That's why Lockheed was interested to begin with. Meanwhile, our previous mayor, Frank Jordan,
spearheaded the move to privatize the San Francisco Zoo, whereby it was sold to a private consortium for $1. After all, private enterprise can always run things more efficiently and better than government, right? Well, no. 2 years later, the zoo was already $4 million in debt, although salaries of the people running it were higher than ever before, as zookeepers themselves were being laid off. So to make up the $4 million, there was a ballot initiative last election, the same one where they rammed through that stadium for the 49ers. Yeah. Anyway, also on the ballot, you may have noticed posters around town with cute little greeting card kitty drawings of bears and things. Save the zoo. Who could say no to saving the zoo? So, of course, it passed by a huge margin, with people actually not bothering to look that they were just handing more government money to a private company that should never be running the zoo in the first place, because after all, if you take the government money away, they'll run it better. Ha, 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 ha. Based on the success of privatizing the zoo, Willie Brown's people are now floating the idea of handing Golden Gate Park over to Levi's. Keeping in mind what happens if you privatize a park like Golden Gate Park, that would also mean Levi's would be able to hire their own police force. And laws against bashing homeless would not necessarily apply to private security guards the way they do the San Francisco Police Department. So privatization can be very, very dangerous. Back to the sell everything, we're giving it away mentality of the Clintonoids and the Newtsies. You know, they're talking about drilling for oil all over Alaska, which has been blocked for years, and then shipping all the oil to Japan and even to China rather than sending it down here. They'll cry energy crisis if they have to get this through, but the oil is actually going to go somewhere else. And quietly, the Clinton people put through a law whereby there was a 7-year statute on oil royalties that oil companies have to pay for the already rock-bottom fees for drilling on government-owned land. And that may not seem like much, but if you go clear back to 78, from 78 to 1983, according to the Progressive, oil companies owed the state of California alone $856 million. That's just up to 83 in one state. That's how much of a corporate giveaway this is, and the real reason Clinton and Gore should be behind bars. They've also revived a toxic, no pun intended, idea of the Bush administration to allow industries to sell pollution credits to each other, whereby it's the grand total of the pollution that they'll measure. They'll measure how legal the pollution is instead of going after each company. So if one company pollutes less than their quota, they can sell the rest of the pollution allotment, you know, how much they're allowed to poison us and everything, to some other company who can then pollute more. The Clintonoids want this applied on a global scale through the GATT Treaty and the upcoming multilateral agreement on investment treaty that I'll get to in a minute here. They're also starting to give away military bases. And in one case, the German Luftwaffe is renting out Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico and practicing in our country. The ultimate goal is to have 1,000 German airmen down there doing who knows what. They also had the bright idea to privatize meat inspection. Get the government off those poor slaughterhouses' backs. E. coli, who cares? The industry can inspect themselves now. They can do a better job. Ho, ho, ho. And they also quietly gutted an obscure law known as the Delaney Clause, which dates back to the 50s. Again, not even Reagan and Bush were corrupt enough to do this. This says no traces of carcinogens, cancer-causing agents, allowed in foods sold in this country. Now, instead, the industry gets to take it product by product and decide the risk assessment, as they put it.
Is there enough in here that we're going to get sued by so many people for killing them that we won't make enough money or not? That's risk assessment, and that's what they've decided to do with the food industry now. Some of you may know they recently tried to destroy the organic food laws, too, and make a new one whereby the stuff that was fertilized with toxic sludge or kept in factory farms or genetically engineered could all be sold as organic food. There was enough public outcry that they withdrew that, proving that making nice crank calls to the agriculture department or whoever and actually public lobbying from the grassroots up can work still. Another gift from the Clintonoids was to yank away Medicare for people who test HIV positive. Only if you have full-blown AIDS will we give you any money. Until you get to the point where we know you're going to die, we won't save your life. We have to spend it on the Pentagon or stealth bombers or something instead. And the latest proposal from both the Clintonoids and the Newtsies is to get rid of Social Security too. Privatize it. Invest it in the stock market. If the whole thing disappears like Orange County's money did in the stock market, well, too bad. We'll all be with Jesus by then anyway. But I think most criminal of all, and the number one reason that Clinton and Gore should be impeached, as well as every single member of Congress who was in on this, was they gave away the airwaves. In other countries, the airwaves are publicly owned, and TV and radio broadcasters pay very large fees for the right to use them. Not here. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 did get a little bit of media coverage, mainly because of a clause in there that didn't seem to bother alleged liberal Clinton one bit of banning naughty words on the internet and making the law so strict against explicit sexual content that you couldn't even learn how to prevent pregnancy or AIDS on the net. The Supreme Court, thankfully, threw this out by a unanimous vote. I guess Clarence Thomas for once looked into his soul and realized that he couldn't get any more porno on his computer if that one went through. They gave away the airwaves. The new digital spectrum for high-definition TV and interactive TV and all that, that's a whole new spectrum of airwaves. Even Robert Dole called it corporate welfare and refused to support it, but once he resigned from the Senate, it went right through. Ralph Nader's Public Citizen group estimates that the amount of money the broadcasters are going to save by not having to pay for what the people own is at a minimum of between $20 and $100 billion. That's the size of this crime going on here. They've said that there are going to be a few other slots available that haven't been handed to multinationals that people can buy through auctions, and that there will be a few little slots open for public broadcasting, and among those invited to bid on those slots are religious broadcasters who get their money tax-free. And that's their Clintonoids' idea of public television. Hand it to Pat Robertson. And this law ended the restrictions on the number of radio and TV stations one person or corporate entity can own in one community. Meaning slowly but surely Rupert Murdoch or Mickey Mouse could buy up every damn one in this town and run all of them. Under this law, that is now legal. What we have now is not capitalism, it is feudalism. New feudalism, where the barons and lords and high castles are the Shell Oils, Exxons, Bill Gatesoids, etc. And every time we go out and buy one of their products, we are their serfs. And it's a little hard to be completely pure and correct about that unless you're Ted Kaczynski. The NAFTA treaty I mentioned earlier
is just proving to be a windfall for people who already have more money than they know what to do with, while providing no benefits to anybody else, and in fact hurting a lot of other people instead. This is the North American Free Trade Agreement between America, Canada, and Mexico. It's really gutted a lot of Canada's economy, and a lot of native products can't get on the shelves anymore because they're being undercut by the stuff made by the multinationals down here. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of jobs have disappeared from America and gone over to Mexico. And meanwhile, in the interest of free trade, they no longer check credentials at the border of things like Mexican truck drivers or the kind of gas they're using, polluting the air or anything. And the accident rate in southern Texas has gone way, way up for semi-trucks. And oftentimes, when they dig people out of the wreckage, the driver is 14 or 15 years old and doesn't have a license. But hey, you can't get strict on that, because after all, free trade is much more important than human beings. Even in Mexico, income is down and unemployment has gone way, way, way up. Many people who've farmed for generations are being forced to abandon their land and live homeless in the cities because they can't very well grow corn down there and try to compete with Archer Daniels Midland or whoever, who's now flooding Mexico with cheap corn from Iowa and Nebraska and Kansas, things like that. In some cases, this is probably going to lead to a rise in people converting that land into poppy and marijuana fields just in time to increase the drug war budget against Mexico. We already gave them 50 attack helicopters last year, saying that it was all to fight drugs, but of course what it's really for is to try and kill off the Chiapas guerrillas and the Zapatistas and things. There's also the number of maquiladora factories south of the American border, across the border from Texas. Mexico continues to grow, where there's no pollution laws like they have on our side of the border, and people work there for next to nothing, of course. And there's so much pollution coming out of those factories that now in Brownsville and McAllen, Texas, there's an epidemic of horrific birth defects. And in El Paso, there's even been reports of cholera, along with tuberculosis, which has also been reported in New York and LA. This works so well for billionaires and multinationals and the like that they've decided the whole world needs to be run this way as well. And already in place is the GATT Treaty, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, another good reason to impeach Clinton. It's kind of NAFTA-izing the entire world, where what corporations want is far more important than anybody's local laws, sovereignty, or democracy. And the end-all organization that can nuke your own law with bolts of lightning from clear across the world is called the World Trade Organization, the WTO, where any member who signed on to the GATT Treaty can challenge any other country's laws as a barrier to free trade and take their complaint to the WTO, who are 3 anonymous bureaucrats and chemical company executives headquartered in Geneva. Their hearings are secret, their documents are secret, their decisions are kept secret on purpose by corporate media. For example, the first WTO decision was to gut the American Clean Air Act, after Brazil and Venezuela complained that they couldn't sell dirty gasoline up here anymore. And so the WTO threatened America with, $150 million in sanctions and fines. So the Clinton people very quietly announced, well, so we don't get fined, we're simply not going to enforce the Clean Air Act anymore. Gone, without any public debate whatsoever. Mexico complained to the WTO that our ban on tuna caught in those big gill nets that kills all these other fish and dolphins and everything. We have a ban on that in this country, thus the dolphin-safe tuna logo and everything. Well, that's been nuked by the WTO as a barrier to free trade. Even if we wind up wiping out so much life in the ocean that we starve ourselves to death, free trade is much more important. And in this case, Vice President Gore spearheaded a new law to replace the old one, whereby we will now go back to allowing all kinds of tuna caught in gill nets into this country, but if the corporations want to put dolphin safe on the cans anyway to fool the public, they can. And that is the solution. Oh, here's a good one too, is we've also challenged other countries' laws under the WTO. For example, the near continent-wide ban in European countries against American beef because of bovine growth hormone. They don't want their people getting stuck with frankenfood over there. But going to bat for the frankenfood industry, of course, are the Clintonoids, who are claiming that this is a barrier to free trade and you have to let this tainted stuff into your country and not tell anybody about it. And NAFTA is working so well in their eyes that they're trying to extend it now to Chile and Brazil, and I think Argentina is the other one. And before Monica Mania happened, you'll recall there was all this hoopla about Clinton going down on a trip to South America. But what they didn't tell you is when he got to Brazil, I think this was in Rio de Janeiro, his limousine was pelted by farm animal manure brought in by farmers who don't want to lose their livelihoods if NAFTA turns into SAFTA. Boy, would I like to get my hands on video footage of that. Such a fitting projectile for the man, too. And if that and the GATT treaty and the WTO aren't enough, there's a new one in the works. A new one so nasty that negotiations themselves were kept secret until they got leaked onto the French internet. This is the Multilateral Agreement on Investments, the MAI treaty, which basically is designed to not only nuke individual laws through complaints to the WTO like GATT, but force governments to abolish all these laws altogether in favor of whatever it is corporations want. No more worker and safety protections, no more environmental regulations, no more democracy anywhere. Essentially, corporations can sue any country or any government within that country for the right to profit. And any law that gets in their way has got to go. For example, minimum wage. For example, local ownership of things like radio stations. For example, low-interest government loans to small businesses run by people inside the country. Same with hiring preferences, can't give them tax cuts, and you can't reward businesses for being more environmentally or labor safety conscious because that would be a violation of the MAI Treaty of Corporations Über Alles. It even has specific language banning the kind of economic sanctions we put on South Africa that helped destroy their apartheid government. And if you don't like things like NAFTA, GATT, and the Nutsi World Order, well, there's a prison cell waiting for you. And if this isn't waiting for you this month, perhaps the newer prison will be open next month. As I was saying before, we are moving from the military-industrial complex to the prison-industrial complex, a new arms race being basically war on the American people. And to get the American people to put up with this is, again, use it as a tool of resegregating, get those alleged super predators with the wrong skin color out of sight, out of mind, ethnic cleansing American style, known as the drug war. Thanks largely to the drug war, the number of people in jail in this country is now the highest per capita of any country on earth. We're worse than China. We're worse than Iraq or Iran. We are worse than Nigeria or South Africa or Russia. In California, there are now 6 times as many people in jail as there were in 1980, and the prisons are still going up. And people are getting thrown in for flimsier and flimsier excuses. 3 strikes, you're out increases the number. And now Clinton's decided that in order to get tougher on drugs, he wants to spend $200 million. Think of what $200 million would do for all the people thrown in the street because of the welfare cuts. But no, it's much more important to spend $200 million to have America the first country in the world with drug-free prisons.
Be serious. I mean, what happens if you've got laws like that on the book and they're piss testing prisoners all the time is you're already finding cases where people get locked up as a suspected gang member or for smoking crack or something. Okay, strike one. Then if you get written up for getting in a fight with a guard or something, of course they're going to take the guard's word. Strike two. Another fight, fail your piss jar test. Strike three, you're never getting out of jail, and the prison industrial complex can keep expanding and making more and more money for themselves. In California, a prison guard now makes almost twice as much salary as a teacher. There's family values for you. Their union is considered among the most powerful in the state. I mean, these sentences are ridiculous. It even hit the straight papers a while back that a woman named Kemba Smith in Washington got 24 and a half years in jail thanks to Clinton's new drug laws and stuff because she admitted she was involved with, she turned in her boyfriend for dealing drugs, and the government promised cooperation, but under the mandatory sentencing, that was what she got. In Florida, a woman just got 15 years for stealing 2 packets of T-shirts, while meanwhile, in California, the first person who got 3 strikes life sentence was somebody who stole a car battery. And there's also been life sentences in California now for sitting in a stolen truck, stealing a slice of pizza, stealing a can of soda, and stealing your cousin's TV set. Life in prison. I mean, in Texas, they've got people locked up down there for life for stealing a can of beer as well. I mean, this is just more evidence that we are living in the fall of Rome. We worry about all these trade deficits with other countries, and China may have more prison labor than we do, but not for long. This is a way of reinstituting slavery in this country. There's been talk of forcing prisoners, especially 3 strikes people, to clean up toxic waste sites that nobody else wants to touch. And you don't have to pay people a whole lot if you've got them doing jobs inside prison. For example, next time you call for reservations on TWA, there's a chance it may be somebody locked up who's doing the phone work for you. TWA was actually able to use this as a threat to prevent their flight attendants from going on strike. Because if they went on strike, they were then going to move the people from the front counter in the airport into the flight attendant's position and move all the phone work into the prisons. So, no strike. Great way of bullying unions into not asking for any health benefits or occupational safety or wage increases, or better yet, ceasing to exist. Macy's uses prison labor now. Bank of America uses prison labor. And in Oregon, they're even taking the prison laborers' money back. $6,000 a year rent for their cells. That's what they do in Oregon now. Oh, they charge for the food too?
$1.50 a meal.
$1.50 a meal. That's about what you'll make a day. Private prisons have grown in number by a factor of 30 over the last 10 years. And of course, in private prisons, even some of the guard unions are against them because private prison guards get way below guard union wages. And if they were so out of control in the violence department in the state prison system, there's no regulation preventing them from getting the same job in the private prison system. A relative of mine who got locked up in the state prison system of Colorado was put in a privately owned prison. And here was somebody trying to turn his life around and get a GED and get into college, and the prison had no library. They had a TV, but no library. And here's a field of bad dreams for you. The largest private prison company in this country, the Corrections Corporation of America, sees so much money in the private prison boom, which is the fastest growing sector of our economy now, by the way. They're putting up a $100 million giant private prison in the Mojave Desert, and they don't know who's going to use it yet. It's the field of bad dreams. Build it and the slaves will come, whether they want to be there or not. This also means that private prison corporations and the guards lobby have a direct financial motive
for lobbying legislatures for more three strikes laws, more drug war money, harsher and harsher sentencing, and even torture devices. The torture reports coming out of the California state prison system are absolutely horrifying at this point, especially in Pelican Bay up north near Crescent City, which is supposed to be where they house the most incorrigible and worst of the worst criminals. But they're also throwing kids in there, hoping that they will be able to force them to crack up and testify against their friends for being in gangs. It's used as a torture device. And one prisoner recently won a suit against Pelican Bay because guards threw him in a tub of scalding water and held him under. Things like that. Meanwhile, in Corcoran State Prison in Southern California, it's been uncovered that the guards had a little game where they would deliberately allow somebody from one prison gang or faction and then somebody from a rival to mysteriously wander unbeknownst to each other into a commons area. And then if they started fighting, the guards would shoot one of them to death. And they're letting this go on in the state prisons. With all these people being thrown in for small-time drug offenses and things like that, I do have to ask what the hell happens when they all get out. Maybe that's why they're trying to pin more three strikes offenses on them while they're inside jail, because there sure as hell ain't any real attempt at rehabilitation or education or anything like that. And thanks to the Clinton-Gingrich crime bill of a couple years ago, there is now no more money for legal services, which they're trying to abolish altogether. Federally enacted law providing lawyers for poor people who can't afford them and stuff. Now, a legal services lawyer is not allowed to take a case involving prisoners' rights or abortion or immigration. And to avoid any more reports coming out of Corcoran or Pelican Bay, Pete Wilson has banned prisoners from being allowed to talk to the press. Not that the mainstream press would care. It's much more important night after night to have OJ, JonBenét, Monica, OJ, JonBenét, Monica, and then on TV, once you've got 20 minutes on that, maybe a few seconds of somebody's house burning up somewhere. Oh, we're live here on camera. It looks like the fire's gone now, and this is the charred Hulk. What do you have to say about being burned out of your home? The Jerry Springerization of the evening news. Keep an eye on that. Then weather, then sports. This is what's known as news being dumbed down to the level of entertainment. I'm ancient enough now, turning 40 in June, that I remember when there was real news on TV and in the newspaper, and the three big networks even did in-depth documentaries on things like why the Vietnam War was fucking up, corruption in the Pentagon, Coca-Cola slave camps in Florida to make Minute Maid orange juice and things like that, but you don't see that now anymore. I'm sure part of the motive for multinationals buying up the mass media after the laws were deregulated under Reagan was to silence their best critics and muzzle media as a fourth branch of government to check and balance the other three. But now it's almost become this tabloid merry-go-round daisy chain where you manufacture something like the JonBenét Ramsey murder or something, and then that quickly can spin off into a tell-all book that the corporation's book publisher publishes. The author goes on the corporate talk show on the corporate TV station. It then gets made into a movie by the corporate-owned movie studio. The soundtrack album comes out on the corporation's major label. The bands then appear on the talk shows and on MTV. And it all goes around in circles, and people think they're actually learning something important. And even what passes for actual news is very cartoon and icon driven. Anything going on at the national level, it's not, do we really want a NAFTA, a GATT treaty, and a prison building boom? It's all, can Clinton beat Newt in this battle of the Titans? It's icon driven. No offense to Martin Luther King, but we have Martin Luther King Day instead of Civil Rights Day. Again, it's focusing on the icon and the media star instead of any thought or sentiment behind it.
What used to be a 60-second soundbite now averages 9 seconds, and the average televised news story now lasts less than a minute. And on the print level, more and more newspapers are being bought up by national corporations, and local coverage and issue coverage disappears almost immediately. You don't have in-depth investigations because it costs too much to put a reporter on one story for months at a time when they could be writing about some different fluff every single day. And if there's less costly local news, the corporate publishers' stock options go up accordingly, so they have their own motive not to print anything newsworthy in their newspaper if they're going to make any money. I mean, a comical example of this, maybe, is last year, Clinton's State of the Union address got bumped to a later day because they were afraid it might interfere with the Miss USA contest on television. I mean, that shows your priorities of our national entertainment state right there. The Detroit News did a survey of local stations there that showed that of the TV news in Detroit, 2% of the news was devoted to government and politics, and poverty, education, race relations, environment, science, or anything international got 0% during the time period they were studying it. And the reason you get so much fluff is that the news is now packaged like TV sitcoms and dramas and shoot-'em-ups, mainly to sell the advertisers' products. It's not quite as blatant as animated cartoon shows about action figures you can then go down and buy at the store, but it's getting close. An executive of Westinghouse, who took over CBS, came right out and said, "We are here to serve advertisers." Not the public, advertisers. And the LA Times new chief executive officer has a new policy whereby selected people from the different major departments of the paper meet every day with selected people from marketing and advertising to produce those sections of the paper together. You know, it used to be a sacred wall, theoretically, between the news and the advertisers, but not at the LA Times anymore. And determined that whatever section doesn't sell enough ads as the rest will be dropped from the paper entirely. Meaning home and garden and, the thing about TV stars is going to get thicker and thicker and thicker, while no advertiser is going to want their story next to a human interest thing about people who've been hurt by welfare cuts or anything like that. We just won't be able to print that anymore because it's just not going to sell enough ads. That's where this is going. Plus, a lot of news is censored even now for fear of offending an advertiser. The San Francisco Examiner yanked a Sunday column by Stephanie Salter for criticizing Nike, because Nike was sponsoring their little Bay Breakers foot race and they didn't want to offend them. So the person responsible said, "Oh, we didn't kill the story, we just chose not to publish it." That, in my mind, is the worst form of censorship going on in this country today, is what they choose not to tell people. Instead, what's substituted for real debate is right-wing talk shows. More and more, meaner and meaner, louder and louder. Some people laugh in my face when I say Rush Limbaugh is still a problem. Just because they don't see his face on TV anymore doesn't mean he's gone. He still is the most popular radio show host in America. And after the Nutzi onslaught in the 94 election, KSFO here fired every talk show host to the left of Hitler and replaced them with nothing but ultra-right-wingers. And even fired people who worked in the office for being too liberal. And when one of the talk show hosts got protested for saying that people with AIDS should be locked in concentration camps, people began picketing the station. He went on the air telling people to come down and beat up the picketers. A lot of the influence of people like Rush Limbaugh or Bob Grant in New York, who's virulently racist. That's ABC's flagship station where he is, and they're trying to make him a national thing. The floodgates opened for that after the democratically controlled Congress about, I think this was before the 92 election actually, quietly abolished a law called the Fairness Doctrine,
which said that if you have some clown like Limbaugh on the air, you have to give time to the other side. Once the fairness doctrine was gone, so was the other side. And now what constitutes debate on TV or in the editorial pages of the paper, whatever, is right-wing versus extreme right-wing. With somebody like Ralph Nader or Noam Chomsky or a Jesse Jackson or anybody from the labor movement, they're just completely wiped out of the media altogether. Their point of view is not allowed. And if that's not enough, Chrysler and Ford, among others, and a couple of the big East Coast phone companies have now sent out notices to every place they advertise saying that they want to be given any advance notice of any articles that contain controversial coverage. That way, they get to act as an in-house censor by threatening to pull their ads for 6 months, the way Ford did when New Yorker magazine had Nine Inch Nails lyrics next to a Mercury ad. They can just threaten to pull the ads, and the article gets cut without us even knowing what they are. But more times than not, they sue. Have you heard of the McLibel case in England, where some London Greenpeace activists were handing out flyers on the streets of London saying, "What's wrong with McDonald's?" and of course stating the obvious on the flyer. And McDonald's responded by suing these people who were unemployed for slander, never guessing that they would then, since they had nothing else to do anyway, they acted as their own attorneys, and the result has been the longest trial in British history. McDonald's won some of their points, lost others, and are appealing the ones they lost. They still won't give in on this one as a way of bullying anybody else from saying anything bad about McDonald's, lest you get tied up in court for years. Oprah Winfrey even got sued. 6 weeks on trial in Amarillo, Texas for slandering cattle. How can you file a lawsuit against somebody for slandering a cow? Well, as Texas Cattleman explained it, she had had a guest on her program pointing out that lax meat inspection, like the Clintonoids just put in, is what led to the outbreak of mad cow disease in England. And he pointed out how this could let E. coli much further out of the bag in America, not to mention our own outbreak of mad cow disease. Oprah said, "Well, I guess I won't be eating any meat now," or she wasn't going to buy any more hamburgers. Well, the Texas Cattlemen said they lost $12 million the next day because beef prices plummeted. Therefore, Oprah should pay them for reimbursement of their property loss. Thankfully, the cattlemen lost. Oprah had the best legal help money could buy. But it got me thinking, maybe that's why these goofy laws keep getting passed in state legislatures now, imposing penalties for slandering cauliflower, slandering peaches, slandering cattle, is because then multinational biotech engineering people with a lot of money in the promotion of Frankenfood, can sue to shut environmental activists up. And they won't be able to afford Oprah's lawyers to fight back. You know, there was already a genetically engineered soybean, courtesy of our friends at Monsanto, which they're trying to get farmers to use now and require them, if they use this pesticide-proof soybean, they have to drench it with Monsanto brand Roundup pesticide, which is famous for melting just about everything in its path as a way of getting rid of pests. You wonder whether you really want Roundup going into your system, but if you ask questions, you could get sued for slandering soybeans. Or at least being a barrier to free trade or whatever. That is the purpose of this law. In Ridgewood, New Jersey, they were even able to get an elementary school play canceled because it was talking about third world labor practices of people like Nike, and the deputy superintendent ordered the play nuked because it doesn't show all the good things corporations do. More recently, A high school student in Evans, Georgia got suspended from school for wearing a Pepsi t-shirt on Coca-Cola Day. Suspended from school. I guess they had a whole concept of putting everybody in Coca-Cola t-shirts when some Coca-Cola executives came to the school to spend all day showing students how great Coke was. Is this what we're supposed to be educated for? This is ridiculous. And when they posed all the students in their mandatory Coke t-shirts for the photo with those nice executives from Coke, the one guy lifted up his shirt and there was Pepsi. Let's hear it for pranks. But suspended from school for a Pepsi t-shirt on Coke Day, that's what it's coming to here. Or, for an example, there was a person who had done weather for a radio station in Central California, I think it was Madera, for over 10 years, and they fired him for failing to predict a sunny day on the day they were having the Rush Limbaugh picnic. Did it rain? Yes. But the guy lost his job for forecasting the weather accurately because it interfered with Rush Limbaugh. So I have a better example of this, actually, that happened to me a while back. I don't know if any of you went to that 30th anniversary of the Summer of Love concert in Golden Gate Park, where I walked on stage and suddenly realized when I was on stage, oh my God, I'm the youngest person on the bill. And I'm almost 40. I've got a lot of generations of people I got to speak for during my 15 minutes of fame while they're setting up the Jefferson Airplane here. And so I pointed out that one of the key differences is in the 60s in the Summer of Love, you sure as hell wouldn't see corporate sponsors like Miller Beer having a giant balloon over by the concession stand. And if it were the 60s, that kind of thing wouldn't be there. Well, within minutes, the Miller balloon wasn't there. But Miller then pulled $15,000 from the event, saying that the people who put it on had failed to guarantee that the artist would not say anything bad about Miller on stage. And they popped our balloon. And this was not a Bill Graham production. Bill Graham heavy-handedly tried to copyright the name Summer of Love and deny anybody else the right to use it, but thankfully they failed, and Chet Helms, who orchestrated the original Summer of Love, and his people were able to put it on instead. But Chet and his crew are a grassroots organization that don't have $15,000, so this was a serious blow. And finally, behind-the-scenes shaming got hot enough that Miller kicked in the money anyway after the Helms people agreed to patch the balloon, which apparently was put out with one cigarette, I might add. It takes a child to raise, R-A-Z-E, a village. To soften the blows of this kind of heavy-handed corporate fascism, we're being bombarded with more and more propaganda showing us how much we're supposed to love this. I mean, that Nike swastika on Tiger Woods' hat is everywhere now. It's almost like the swastika really is the actual mark of the beast. Think about it. It's everywhere. More and more buildings and structures are getting named after corporations. In Denver, they just broke ground to build a new basketball arena called the Pepsi Center. And in San Francisco, they're building a new baseball stadium nobody really needs. And are they going to name it after Willie Mays or our dear departed megalomaniac Joseph Alioto, the former mayor they're trying to name something after right now? No, guess what the name of the stadium is? They're naming it after the phone company. Noted sports hero, Pac Bell Park. They're taking over events as well. I noticed in the TV guide over New Year's where they have all those college football bowl games, one of them, which ironically used to be called the Independence Bowl, is now called the Weed Eater Bowl. Yeah,
yeah, we're really winning this year at school, man. We're all going to get in the RVs and go down to the Weed Eater Bowl. What is wrong with this picture? The worst impact really is in the schools, though. And, all the mean-spirited budget cuts, courtesy of the family values mobs, guess who's ready to step in with some money here? Jefferson County in Colorado took all this money from Pepsi to build an athletic facility in return for making Pepsi the official drink of the Jefferson County school system. Poor family, need your milk at lunch? Well, guess what you get? And in San Francisco now, the special field trip bus for the kids is the Old Navy bus. The fun bus is painted all blue with the Old Navy, owned by Gap, logo on the side. In Colorado Springs, Colorado, they're selling billboard space on the side of school buses, as well as space inside the schools near the athletic facilities. And again, Pepsi is the official drink down there as well. Of course, a lot of schools that wind up having to rely on things like Channel 1, that piped-in news that comes on every day if you have it in school, that has 1 minute of commercials in addition to the news for a captive audience and everything. Most of the people stuck with these corporate so-called donations are urban schools, largely with kids of color in them who don't have as much money as the others. As they're being gutted through the budget cuts, what are they getting taught instead? Well, some of these handouts, courtesy of the generous corporations, including an incident in Staten Island, New York, where kids began coming home one day with instant Calvin Klein tattoos all over themselves because they came free inside the book binders provided by Calvin Klein. And according to San Francisco Bay Guardian, there's some real doozies in the environmental education department being provided by people like oil companies. Shell Oil has one called Fueling America's Future. And Fueling America's Future has a young couple getting back to nature in their Jeep. When the male passenger talks about the wonders of nature and the female driver responds, "What about the wonders of cars, trucks, and gasoline?" That's how we travel, see the sights, live where we want, and work where we want. And as the Shell logo, according to The Guardian, lingers in the left-hand corner of the screen, the guy asks, "What about nature?" The woman responds, "It takes gasoline to power the vehicles to get us to nature." And gasoline comes from nature. Meanwhile, Procter & Gamble has distributed Decision Earth to 75,000 schools, including the lessons for the kids such as clear cutting removes all trees to create new habitat for wildlife. And it, quote, opens the forest floor to sunshine. Thus stimulating growth. Even then, drilling into the kids, you have to grow, stimulating growth. All growth is good, and it provides food for animals. They don't mention which animals, if any, mind you, but meanwhile, the other real big enemy of education in this country, gaining a bigger stronghold over our lives, inch by inch, so that you don't really notice, because when people do, they tend to get a little angry, is the religious right. Christian supremacist extremists. Bit by bit, they've been seizing control of the state level of the apparatus of the Republican Party, which is why more and more militia nut nitwits keep winding up in Congress and the like. And of course, if that doesn't seem mainstream, the corporate press can always change that in a few years and things. They've finally succeeded in bullying the National Association of Biology Teachers into opening in their platform a door whereby evolution isn't the only explanation for how we got here, and maybe there was a master hand after all. CNN rejected ads for parents of friends of lesbian and gays out of fear of offending Pat Robertson. Alabama Governor Fob James is now saying he's going to call out the National Guard if he has to. You know, kind of like George Wallace in the schoolhouse door saying segregation forever. Only this time is to put the 10 Commandments up in all the schools. And a committee, at least, in the Tennessee State Senate passed a law whereby the teachers who say evolution is a scientific fact can be fired. My favorite of these is in Gaston, North Carolina, where concerned parents demanded that Africa and Germany be removed from all maps and globes because those places are anti-Christian. And that the Greek alphabet be removed from history classes because it might promote homosexuality. But in some places, people like this have a hell of a lot of power. For example, Oklahoma City, thanks to some behind-the-scenes lobbying by the Christian Coalition, people will soon be going on trial for possessing videos of the tin drum because it has a little kid snuggling up to somebody, therefore it's child porn. A store called Planet Comics and Science Fiction was shut down entirely through repeated police harassment. And the Oklahoma City cops even stormed 6 video stores demanding all the names of people who had rented that noted subversive pornographic film, The Tin Drum. And they even arrested somebody who was in the process of watching it in his own home. All this was courtesy of a group called Oklahomans for Children and Families. But the reason the Christian Coalition had such an easy time persuading the cops they were on solid legal grounds is another thing inserted into that Telecommunications Act that Clinton and Gore and the Newtsies were so fond of, was the 1996 Child Pornography Prevention Act, which essentially classifies just about everything as child porn. Even a 40-year-old woman in pigtails in a porno magazine can get that thing busted for child porn. In Oklahoma City, that means that all but Playboy and Penthouse are now banned from the entire town. Meanwhile, Randall Terry of Operation Rescue fame is now attacking books, where his minions have been going into bookstores, opening up books by noted photographer Jock Sturgis, who the FBI tried to bust for child porn several years ago and failed. They just walk in, tear pages out of the book, and leave. Kind of like super predators or those lawless youth who don't respect authority. In North Carolina now, in order to get a grant from the State Arts Council, artists must sign an agreement saying they won't offend any local governments. And even think Jesse Helms at the national level is scary. Wait till you see what they're like at the local level there. Meanwhile, Christian Coalition-controlled decency squads who operate anonymously in Virginia and Prince William and Fairfax counties have been getting videos and video stores busted right and left, and almost every video they've gone after has African American people in them. Can books be far behind? Not if Focus on the Family, the second most powerful religious organization to the Christian Coalition, has their way. Several years ago, they started a campaign to bully libraries into taking anything that offends them off the shelves under their Family-Friendly Libraries campaign. You know, and family-friendly libraries means all literature promotes the superiority of the family home with mother and father living monogamously like Donna Reed or Leave It to Beaver or whatever. No mention of sex or sex education or AIDS prevention or the existence of gay people or anything like that. You know, anything that might corrupt their child should be taken out of the library or put in a special room where you can't have children in and things like that. And for the hell of it, when I was back visiting in Colorado, I figured, what the hell, I'm going to go visit Focus on the Family. So I go to their little visitor center, which they've got a green highway exit sign from the government to promote down there. And immediately I walk in, and if you think the Walmart greeters are scary, people descended on me like locusts and whatnot. How you doing today? Where'd you come from? What'd you like to see? You know, I was just like, I just wanted to look around. And I thought I dressed straight enough for them and whatnot, but I was getting followed, and eventually I wound up in the gift shop, and do you have anything about rock music? and they directed me to a video on how Beavis and Butthead was the cause of the downfall of children's behavior in our society and made kids start fires. But the best thing they had in this citizen bulletin of theirs was part of their anti-library campaign. There was a whole bale of them right by the front door, and I was thinking, well, if I take the whole bale, nobody else can read these. But there were people standing right above me as I knelt down with their arms folded watching, so I was only able to get a handful of them and funnel one down to the Colorado State Library people and stuff. The American Library Association believes children should have access to all material, no matter how violent or obscene. What lurks in the library? We have a cartoon of what lurks in the library, showing little kids eagerly reading Playboy, Pipe Bombs Illustrated, Anarchy Atlas. I mean, I wish this was the library when I was a kid. Because on the shelf behind them, you have access to Is Sniffing Glue for You? Cannibalism, an alternative lifestyle. My Pal Manson. Next to Curious George is The Fun with Fire. Fire, fire, fire. You know, I'm sure. About another shelf, Naked Tennis. But enough people are believing this that attacks on library books and school curriculums have skyrocketed, even though this is direct political activity, which you're not supposed to be able to be a tax-deductible organization for. The Christian Coalition gets away with it anyway, and the Clintonoids never bother to go after them for tax evasion. It kind of makes you wonder who they're down with. And if that's not enough, wait till you meet the Promise Keepers. Me, Tarzan, you, Jane, in Nuremberg Rally Glitz. They finally got the front cover of the national magazines with their Million Bigot March featuring this tyrannical football coach looking like Michael Landon on angel dust, claiming that all the Promise Keepers are trying to do is make stronger, more conscientious men be nicer to their wives and not commit adultery anymore, but they emphasize man is the head of household. And Bill McCartney, the scary coach in question, is virulently anti-gay and worked very hard to help ensure the anti-gay amendment passed in Colorado, and virulently anti-abortion as well, and of course is a fundamentalist Christian. And they claim the Promise Keepers is not political, but their own internal memos show they intend to enter politics in the 2000 election on a national scale. So what do you do about all this? I've said before in some of these earlier shows, don't hate the media, become the media. At a time when things are so dumbed down, people's own zines, the stuff on the internet and whatnot is more important than ever. I think that's probably the most important thing punk has given the world, even more than all the cool music, is the do-it-yourself independent underground zine. You got something to say, don't wait for sassy to say it. Get sassy and say it. And of course that goes for the internet too. There's all kinds of things you can learn off there, and you can contribute there even if it's just a personal anecdote or something like that. Some of my favorite zines are the same way, when people don't talk about the same bands that everybody else does, but just talk about personal experience or people they know of any age who have kind of a cool angle on things, stuff like that. But again, with the net, be careful. Shop around. If you hear something too wild to be true, that's probably what it is. Get a second opinion. I mean, there's no better example of the weird stuff on the net than people debating as we speak the details of my recent shooting death.
There also was a big debate after I got jumped by some thugs in Berkeley at a show and my knee got smashed backwards and stuff and my leg got broken. In part thanks to Maximum Rock and Roll, there was a debate on whether or not I deserved it because I was some sort of alleged rich rock star. Therefore, I deserved to be beaten to a pulp. And people were logging in saying, oh yeah, he deserves it. I saw him driving around a BMW just the other day. Never mind, I couldn't even walk, let alone drive at the time. Oh, no, I saw him on the bus writing poetry. And both those people identified me by a goatee I'd shaved off 6 months earlier. Meanwhile, Michael Dean of Bomb went on the internet trying to get an email address for me, and 12 different people came back all claiming they were me. I mean, you gotta watch this or the internet can get dumbed down to the CB radio craze of the 1970s. You know, breaker, good buddy, am I talking to a real trucker? How different is that from, oh wow, I'm online with Courtney Love. The net is a great thing and should not be censored, but use it intelligently, for crying out loud. Another major tool that I wholeheartedly support is, if you're tired of all the dumb stuff being pumped at you through TV and all the garbage being played that's allegedly alternative on corporate radio, and keep in mind CBS Radio has announced that this spring they're going to start selling playlist space on their radio stations to major labels. You know, I guess if they announce it ahead of time, it's not payola or something like that, but one more example of corporatizing where somebody smaller who makes more interesting music can't get on the air at all, where you get an unending diet of Alanis Hootie Fish over and over and over again. Pirate radio is a really good thing for this reason. I'm hoping as the technology gets cheaper, pirate television won't be far behind. We're going to need it once the Telecommunications Act really hits home. And pirate radio has already gotten powerful enough that our lovely federal government is scared shitless. For example, last October, I believe it was, federal judge Claudia Wilken in Oakland ruled that Berkeley Free Radio did have a right to go to trial in their conflict with the Federal Communications Commission. A major victory in the short run for pirate radio. Let's hear it for Stephen Dunifer and everybody at Berkeley Free Radio. The federal response was quick and swift in Florida. In Tampa, Florida, Doug Brewer of Party Pirate Radio and his wife were surprised in the wee hours one morning to find out their entire block had been cordoned off and a SWAT team came in accompanied by FBI agents, customs agents, immigration, ATF, a person claiming he represented the CIA, who slammed them onto the floor, handcuffed them, and held them at gunpoint on the floor for 12 hours, even threatening to shoot their cat for disobedience because the cat jumped on the kitchen counter. As they tore the house to pieces, Gestapo style, carting off almost anything connected with electricity, let alone broadcasting. There was a little antenna in the backyard. They used a crane from the other side of the house to pull the antenna down, smashing up the house in the process. All this for one little pirate radio station that even helped the police track loose criminals from time to time and stuff. The message being, if you want to play something on the air that people really want to hear, we will march into your home with the Gestapo. As long as people can't even start their own radio station without fear of the Gestapo in this country, we sure as hell don't live in a free country, do we? And all this gives me hope. Because this many people being thrown out with welfare cuts, job cuts, etc. This is the sort of thing of which revolutions are made. And visions of carpet bombing the Promise Keepers dance in my head. Drive-bys moving from Mission Street to Wall Street. But there's got to be a better way, a nonviolent way. Which brings me to my last piece. This is called Wake Up and Smell the Noise. The corporate lords, their loyal opposition, and that vast majority known as the rest of us all agree on one thing. America has gone to hell. The whole world seems damn near ruined. We might have been a great country once, but we sure as hell ain't anymore. Everyone knows it. Everyone feels it. Everyone asks, what for? Hospitals closed because there ain't no money. Playgrounds closed because there ain't no money. Schools can't teach because there ain't no money. Roads and bridges fall apart because there ain't no money. People sleeping in the street because there ain't no money. And every time it's the same old story. Gotta make do without because there ain't no money. There ain't no money because we've run out of money. Where did that money go? The money ain't gone. It's just been stolen by the kind of people who already have so much money, they can't think of anything better to do than plot and scheme ways to make even more money. If that means screwing everyone else, so much the better. At least that way someone wins. If you ask me, that kind of greed is the most dangerous drug on earth. What really does more damage to the world? Drug addiction or wealth addiction? As Noam Chomsky said recently, just open up Fortune magazine, who reports corporate profits dazzling last year, even more splendid this year. Profits will keep booming till the end of the century, right? Read down their list of the Fortune 500. That's who stole the money. Wake up and smell the noise. As a Japanese radical group in the 60s once said, we are being farmed. We thought we'd be so much further along into the dazzling, limitless future, like those snazzy ads from the old magazines at the dawn of the atomic age, where appliances rained like magic from heaven as we flew through the air in our bubble-top cars. Bigger, better technology is the magic key to more fun, more leisure time, less degrading busy work. Why? With more and more work in the hands of technology, we might not have to work anymore at all. There will be plenty for everyone and enough time to buy it. Instead, the people that stole the money have aimed technology in a different direction, investing that stolen money into the development of ever nastier ways and ever nastier tools for treating the rest of us like slaves. Survey after buried survey shows people everywhere are less happy, working harder, getting less, more frightened, and less able to take care of themselves. 2001, A Space Odyssey? It's looking more and more like a one-way ticket to Rwanda. Wake up and smell the noise. The brave new world is a cyber plantation where, thanks to so-called free trade under the NAFTA and GATT treaties and the upcoming MAI, it is now officially sealed in writing that global corporations can act as their own sovereign nations. Laws don't apply to them anymore, and every human being in every country on earth must now compete against each other for who will work for the lowest wage. According to Jeremy Rifkin in his book, The End of Work, 3/4 of all the jobs in America, that's 90 million of 124 million existing jobs, are slowly being made extinct by technology. A lot of people who've reviewed that book say Jeremy Rifkin is exaggerating. So let's cut that figure in half. Cut it by 2/3. That's still 30 million more people unemployed because of computers, downsizing, and the NAFTA-GATCHA swindle. Aren't at least some of them going to be a little upset? But the Wall Street robber barons are so caught up in their dirty little game to suck up and control more and more and more money, they forgot one thing. Who's going to buy all their snazzy new techno toys when no one has a job anymore? And when meaningful work is gone and there ain't no future, and the soon-to-be former middle-class kids are dropping out and shoegazing, while the poor people who know it and feel it are ready to kill, where does Wall Street expect all these people to go? What are we all supposed to do? Die? There's no way this can last. There's no way this can last. On a lot of smashed horizons, the future is gone, and people are already getting desperate enough to do something stupid. Oklahoma City's only happened once because we're damn lucky, that's all. As the veneer of democracy fades away, as the world's downsized until it explodes, as the shanty towns piled behind the malls become visible, as the savages on the other side of the wall break through, and everybody from gun-crazy militias to gangster rappers to community activists to working families just struggling to put food on the table, all mad at the same thing. You'd think there'd be a widespread, united opposition, right? Instead, America is on the verge of civil war. No, it's already here. Unspoken, unacknowledged, and mostly on the surface, bloodless civil war. A class war marketed as a race war. Of sensationalized sound bites and tabloid images where people who used to say nigger now get away with saying welfare cheats. Where someone used to say spick, they can now say illegal immigrants. And it's become downright trendy to bash black single mothers at a time when most teenage mothers in America are white, while over half the mothers in a low-crime paradise like Sweden are not married. It's almost as though the message between the lines here is, we don't want their kind to reproduce. I first saw welfare cheat used as the code word for nigger when Ku Klux Klan wizard David Duke ran for governor of Louisiana and got the Republican nomination. Next, I saw it move on over to Jesse Helms' 1990 Senate campaign, where the new nigger word for affirmative action was quotas. Preferences. From there, it spread like a virus, finding its way into the venomous, fang-dripping mouth of George Bush, followed eagerly by Clinton and Gore promising to end welfare as we know it, multiplied by 100 by the Contract on America thugs, made respectable by magazine cover story hype of white supremacist-funded research sold in book form as the bell curve. And now, Californians, egged on by that grumpy little Marine, Pete Wilson, once again come out of the closet and reveal themselves as Mickey Mouse with a white hood on and vote to ban affirmative action and ready themselves to ban bilingual education. Sometimes when you look at this, it's very revealing to trace back who's been mentally networking with whom. As usual, the real conflict is not what they say it is. It's not the left versus the right, but the top versus the bottom. A class war marketed as a race war, that we are being manipulated and programmed to fight to keep us all from turning our most potent weapons, our time, our energy, and our souls against the real enemy and taking back what is rightfully ours. We are living in the new dark ages. Only if we let ourselves. I repeat, there's no way this can last. It never does. That's the best and most dangerous part. Throughout history, seemingly invincible dictatorial death regimes in Germany, Russia, South Africa, Czechoslovakia, Nicaragua, Chile, all had one thing in common. They all failed. They all collapsed. They all destroyed themselves. The question isn't, will there be an uprising, but what form will it take? Will it be violent? Will it be peaceful? Will it be humane enough to work? Will people fight long and intelligently enough to make it work? Wake up and smell the noise. Out of nowhere, when we least expect it, the piñata is finally smashed to bits, and out of its guts rains all that power that's held us down for so long. What happens when that door does open? Will we all be too scared to go in? Will we all sit on our butts and wait for somebody else to do the work for us until something more horrible than what we got now beats us to it? Newt Gingrich, eyes gouged out, hanging from a tree. Corpse pelted with rocks and bottles. The crowd dances with glee. But in the long run, what will that solve in daily life for you and me? Most important of all is after the fall. That's when we must be ready. Who would have guessed that the white apartheid regime in South Africa would go as relatively peacefully as they did, and all hell didn't break loose right afterwards? Someone was ready. Who would have guessed that a playwright best known for being thrown in jail for his beliefs would wind up becoming president of Czechoslovakia? A brutal communist dictatorship replaced by an elected parliament with rock musicians in it. And filmmakers, actors, and longtime frontline anti-government activists. Someone was ready. Like any government, the Czech Republic's turned out far from perfect, but what's now called the Velvet Revolution is still, to me, inspiring. It took a painfully long time, but in the long run, all the Russian tanks in Prague couldn't stop the will of a people so fed up with being screwed, they brought them down by word of mouth. Ever thought about what you would do if that went down here? Really thought about what would I do if I suddenly found myself in a position to help take the bull by the horns and start fixing what's wrong? What would I do if I found myself in charge because the pigs in charge weren't there anymore? Where would I want to be? What would I want to do first? What would I want to do second if I was in charge? Would I just want to kick butt? It's easy to spot and complain about what's wrong. How would you make it right? We go on and on about the big takeover. What will you do if you do take over? Is my American-sized ego run amok yet again when I ask myself from time to time what I would do if I was in the president's shoes right now? Not necessarily. Today's mind expansion can be tomorrow's key to survival, if not salvation. To think for yourself, what would I do if I was mayor of this town right now? What would I do if I had the power to clean up a violent, corrupt police department? What would I do if I was in the place of the boss I hate so much at work? Or school board, school teacher, doctor, lawyer, union representative, machinist, farmer, mother, father, idea man, in some situation I hear about right now. If I put myself in their place, what would I do? What am I good at? What can I do best? What would I most want to do that's different from the rest? What hole can I fill with what I know how to do? It's an ongoing thing that takes years of bouncing stuff like this around in your head when you feel like it, putting it back on the shelf when you don't, just so long as you use it, develop it, keep getting better at it,
Because like any contact sport, in crisis mode brain wrestling, practice makes perfect. And the more I delve into this myself, the more I know how much I don't know. And that's half the fun. If someone does have to step in from the anti-government community, I hope to hell it ain't me. But it never hurts to start getting ready, just in case it is you. Which would you rather burn, a flag or a bank? It's not that easy. We're all going to need each other if we do have to run things someday. No problem that affects a lot of people is simple to solve. Not everyone who feels the same pain agrees on where it comes from or what to do about it. There's always someone who wants to change it all back, afraid of the future because they're just trying to survive. Most people don't hate the rich people screwing them half as much as they wish they were one of them. How do you reach them? Some things change slowly, some things never do, and as I've said before, nothing's ever going to change till we who want the change understand why different kinds of people want what they want and think the way they do. When they wake up and smell the noise but hear it differently, do we hear them too? There's nothing cops and corporations love more than to sit back and watch us turn off everyone we think we're trying to help by splitting into nitpicky, power-trippy, backbiting factions and tearing each other apart. I want to be leader. No, I want to be leader. No, I want to be leader. No, I want to be leader. Blah, blah, backstab, backstab. If you don't agree with me on everything, you must be against me. That's poison. Anyone who's not a vegetarian is automatically evil. All hip-hop is bad because some gangster rappers are sexist. If you don't believe every word of the Bible, you're a devil worshiper. If you're not gay, you must be homophobic. Look at me wrong, you're a racist. Criticize Israel, ooh, you hate Jews. Wear lipstick, you can't be a feminist. Divide, divide, divide. Let the powerful few keep the quarreling majority from sharing in what is rightfully everyone's. And speaking of divide, most pathetic of all, the only important thing in the whole world is the punk rock scene. And you're a sellout traitor to the sacred punk rock scene if you so much as disagree with me in any way, listen to music I don't like, dress funny, dress normal, laugh without permission, or even so much as speak to any artist who ever made a dime off their years of hard work without at least beating them up first. Wake up and smell the noise. In these times, we can't afford to get caught up in blind fundamentalism of any kind. There's too many different kinds of people in this world, in this country, in this building, to hide behind one-issue isolationist chicken shit anymore. Here we are, in the richest country in the world, and it's getting as horrible now as it was in the Great Depression of the 1930s. It rips me up inside seeing broken men and women on street corners in the rain holding up signs saying homeless will work for food. Hard as it may be for some crybabies to believe, people in that situation could care less if Green Day and the Offspring sold out when they signed to major labels. Other things and other truths are more important. The cutthroats that run things cheat and kill to get where they are. We got nothing but our hearts, our souls, and our energy. But look what that's done as a simple spark, starting fires throughout history all over the world. Even in America, we stopped the Vietnam War. We got rid of the first Nixon.
The whole Berkeley free speech movement wasn't planned. It just happened when the cops were trying to drag a protester away from campus in a police car. First one protester stood in front of the car, Chinese style, then another one, then another, then by the dozen, then by the hundreds, they surrounded that cop car and wouldn't let it leave for 32 hours. That got on TV, and the whole world was watching, and a movement or two was born. 500,000 people block a dam in India. A dam gets canceled in Tasmania because people just wouldn't stop chaining themselves to construction equipment. March 25th, 1995, 10,000 people walked out of school and marched on City Hall in New York City. Not just students, but teachers and principals, parents, all united against Republican budget cuts. No surprise that got blacked out of the national news. Education benefits slashed by right-wingers in Italy. Even 5-year-old kids walked out on strike. Schools and universities in Rome stayed virtually empty until the budget cuts were restored. When the French government tried American-style budget cuts, the workers didn't sit there and grumble about it like a bunch of Americans. They went on strike and shut the whole country down for a month. And in Mexico, kidnapping millionaires has become what the business world likes to refer to as a growth industry. One more thing the corporate media doesn't dare tell you is that a few thousand rebels, if that, in Chiapas in Mexico, have uncorked such a nationwide outpouring of rage that people by the thousands are demonstrating against the government, inequality, and corruption somewhere in Mexico every damn day. Will Mexico dare allow its people genuine, peaceful change? Will the people there be ready, or will it be the other kind? Wake up and smell the noise. The unified, wealthy, powerful few are only as strong as their weakest link. A well-thought-out surgical strike is all it can take to cut off the tail that's wagging the dog. Then it will be our turn to deal with the dog. Or should I say, porcupine. If we each grab a quill, we'll be strong enough to drive. No more lifetimes preparing for death. No more give me lithium or give me meth. No more can't fix nothing because everything's ruined already. Why try? No more being a spectator in our own lives. Even thinking about this stuff can't help but make you smarter. Help break out of no I can't to yes I can to now I must. We're not equal till we're equal. We're not free until we're free. I'd rather work for something I want and not get it than work or vote for something I don't want and get it. And what we got now, I repeat, there's no way this can last. Wake up and smell the noise. Corporate dictatorship is headed for a train wreck. And that train wreck will happen in our lifetime. Not right away, but in our lifetime. And if we aren't ready to cut the crap and know how to work with each other, to zero in and focus on what's really important and have an idea of what we each have got to do to be ready to do it right, we will get fooled again.